My siblings excluded me from their weddings for years. So when I got married, I gave them exactly what they gave me. Hey Reddit, my siblings banned me from their weddings for literal years, claiming I'd ruin their special days. So when it was my turn to get married, I returned the favor. What followed was absolute chaos. Buckle up because this one's a ride. I'm Jake, 28 male, middle child in a family of 5 kids. Got an older brother Tyler, 32 male, older sister Hannah, 30 female, younger sister Lily, 25 female, and younger brother Owen, 23 male. Classic middle child setup where you're basically invisible unless someone needs something. Growing up, the family dynamic was pretty clear from the start. Tyler was the golden boy. Star athlete, straight A's, full ride to state university. Hannah was the princess, beauty pageant winner, student council president, the whole package. Then there was me, just existing somewhere in between, watching everyone else get celebrated while I got polite acknowledgement at best. My parents ran a small accounting firm together. Dad handled business taxes, Mom did personal returns. They made decent money, enough for a comfortable suburban life with a pool and annual vacations to places like Florida or California. Nothing crazy rich, but solid middle-class stability that should have been enough for all of us. The favoritism wasn't subtle. It was practically a family sport. Tyler got a new car for his 16th birthday. A Honda Accord. Nothing fancy but reliable and exactly what a teenage boy dreams about. Hannah got a car too when she turned 16, plus her own credit card for emergencies and necessities. That credit card saw more Starbucks runs and mall trips than actual emergencies, but nobody seemed to mind. When I turned 16, I got a lecture about responsibility and a part-time job application for the local grocery store. No car, no credit card, just a speech about character building and earning your own way. Tyler and Hannah earned their privileges, Dad explained while I stood there confused about what I'd done wrong. You need to prove yourself too. Prove myself right. Tyler had been kicked off the basketball team twice for fighting with other players. Hannah had wrecked her first car within 6 months, drove it straight into a light post while texting, and they just paid for repairs without question, then increased her insurance premium without making her contribute a dime. But somehow, I was the one who needed to prove something. The double standards were everywhere. Once you started looking for them, Tyler could stay out until 2 a.m. on weekends. No questions asked. Hannah could skip family dinners whenever her friends had plans. But when I asked to go to a friend's birthday party on a Sunday afternoon, I got interrogated about who would be there, what we'd be doing, and whether their parents would be home. Started working at Save Mart, bagging groceries and stocking shelves 40 hours a week during summers and 20 hours during school. Made minimum wage, $7.25 an hour back then, and saved every single penny. Lived like a monk, eating ramen and packing sandwiches, wearing the same rotation of 5 shirts until they had holes. Bought my own beater car after 9 months of saving, a 1998 Toyota Corolla with 187,000 miles, a dent in the passenger door, a cracked windshield, and a radio that only worked on AM stations. That car was ugly and unreliable, and broke down twice in the first month I owned it, but it was mine. I'd earned every dollar that paid for it, and nobody could take that away from me. Meanwhile, Tyler and Hannah coasted through college on my parents' money-full tuition, apartment rent, spending money for books and supplies that mostly went to parties and spring break trips. Tyler pledged a fraternity, $2,800 per semester, and my parents paid it without blinking. Hannah joined a sorority, $3,200 per semester, and got the same treatment. When I graduated high school with a 3.6 GPA and got accepted to the same state university Tyler attended, my parents sat me down for a financial planning discussion. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, excited to talk about dorm options and class schedules, when Mom pulled out a folder of papers. "We're proud of you for getting in," Mom started, using that voice that meant bad news was coming. "But money's been tight lately. Business expenses, you know. We can help with community college if you want to go that route first. Maybe you can transfer after a year or two. Money's been tight." They'd literally just paid for Hannah's sorority fees and Tyler's new laptop 2 weeks earlier. They'd taken a family vacation to Hawaii that I wasn't invited on because someone needed to watch the house. But suddenly when it was my turn, the money dried up faster than a puddle in July. "What about loans?" I asked. Dad frowned. "Those will follow you for years. Maybe take a gap year, work full-time, save up." Tyler had taken a gap year. He'd spent it backpacking through Europe on my parents' dime, posting Instagram photos from hostels in Amsterdam and beaches in Greece. But apparently my gap year would involve working double shifts at Save Mart. took out student loans and worked through college. Graduated with $42,000 in debt and a degree in computer science. Got a decent job as an IT support specialist making $55,000 a year. Not amazing, but enough to start chipping away at the loans while living in a cheap apartment with 2 roommates who never cleaned the bathroom and ate my food without asking. The apartment was garbage. Thin walls, broken AC, a stove with only 2 working burners. But it was mine. Nobody could tell me when to come home or question my choices. That freedom was worth the roaches. Tyler went into sales, made good money, bought a house at 26 with help from mom and dad for the down payment. $25,000 they just handed over like it was pocket change. When I asked if they'd help me with a down payment someday, Dad laughed and said real estate was probably not my speed, since I was more of a renter personality. Hannah married some finance guy named Brandon, became a stay-at-home mom at 24, lived in a house that probably cost more than I'd make in 5 years. Her kitchen had marble countertops. Her bathroom had heated floors. She drove a Lexus SUV and complained about traffic. Meanwhile, I was eating dollar menu food and celebrating when my student loan balance dropped below $40,000. The real betrayal started when Tyler got engaged 7 years ago. His girlfriend Amy seemed nice enough the handful of times I'd met her. They'd been dating for 3 years after meeting at some sales conference. Tyler proposed with this elaborate beach setup that probably cost $5,000. Photographer, live musicians playing acoustic covers, rose petals scattered everywhere, champagne on ice. Mom and Dad paid for half of it, naturally. It's important to start the engagement off right, Mom explained when I asked why they were funding such an expensive proposal. First impressions matter. Right. First impressions matter for some kids. For others, character building and proving yourself matter more. When Tyler called to tell me he was engaged, I was genuinely happy for him. We weren't super close. He'd always been too focused on being the golden boy to pay much attention to me. But he was still my brother. Blood supposedly meant something. Congratulations, man, I said. That's awesome. When's the wedding? Next June. Listen, I wanted to talk to you about something. My stomach dropped. Something in his tone warned me this wasn't going to be good news. That careful, measured way he was speaking, like he was handling fragile glass or a bomb. Amy and I have been planning this really carefully, he continued. It's going to be a small ceremony, just immediate family and close friends. We're keeping the wedding party super tight, just her 2 brothers as groomsmen. I processed that information slowly. Okay, so I'm not in the wedding party? Right, we just want to keep it simple. You understand. Simple. His wedding ended up having 12 bridesmaids and 12 groomsmen. I saw the photos later. They looked like a small army standing at that altar. But somehow, including his actual brother would have complicated things. But I'll be there, right? As a guest? Long pause. Too long. The kind of silence that tells you everything before words do. Here's the thing, Amy's family is really traditional. They have this superstition about middle children at weddings. Something about bad luck and disrupting the natural order of things. I know it sounds crazy, but it's really important to her family. I actually laughed because I thought he was joking. Middle children disrupting weddings? That sounded like something from a bad comedy sketch. He wasn't joking. You're serious? You're not inviting me to your wedding because of a superstition? It's not personal, Jake. It's just easier this way. You understand, right? Family dynamics are complicated. We're trying to keep everyone happy. No, I didn't understand. My brother was getting married and actively choosing not to invite me because his fiance's family had some made-up superstition about middle children being bad luck. It sounded like complete garbage, and we both knew it. Does Mom know about this? I asked. Yeah, we talked to her and Dad last week. They get it. They said you'd understand once we explained. You've always been reasonable about this kind of stuff. My parents knew. They knew their son was excluding me from a major family event, and they were fine with it. They'd actually discussed it, agreed to it, and decided not to warn me. That hurt worse than Tyler's decision. Way worse. I have to go, I said, and hung up before he could hear my voice crack. Spent that night staring at my apartment ceiling, trying to understand what I'd done to deserve this. Was I really that forgettable? That disposable? Had I done something so terrible that my own brother couldn't stand having me at his wedding? My roommate Chris found me on the couch at 2 a.m., still awake, just sitting there in the dark like some kind of depressed statue. You good? He asked. My brother's getting married. I'm not invited. Chris, who'd met my family exactly once at my college graduation and immediately pegged them as kind of awful, just nodded like this made perfect sense. Your family's messed up, man. You know that, right? Yeah. I was starting to figure that out. Tried talking to Owen about it a few days later. He was the youngest and had always been sort of neutral in the family dynamics. Not mean to me, but not particularly close either. Did you know Tyler wasn't inviting me to his wedding? I asked. Yeah, he mentioned something about it. Said it was Amy's family thing. And you don't think that's weird? Owen shrugged. I mean, it's their wedding. They can invite whoever they want. Even if that means excluding their own brother? Look, Jake, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe try being more involved with the family. You're always working or doing your own thing. Maybe they felt like you wouldn't care anyway. That stung. I was always working because I had to work. Nobody was paying my bills or funding my life, but apparently working hard to survive made me seem uninvolved. Tyler's wedding came and went. Saw the photos on social media. Huge celebration. Probably 200 guests despite the small ceremony nonsense he'd fed me. Live band, open bar, ice sculpture shaped like swans. Light show that probably violated several city ordinances. All that money spent on a party I wasn't allowed to attend. The photos showed Tyler surrounded by friends, family, co-workers. Hannah was a bridesmaid, Lily caught the bouquet, Owen gave a speech as a groomsman. My parents looked happy in every picture. Mom in an expensive dress, Dad in a tux. Everyone was there, everyone except me. Mom called me the day after. It was a beautiful ceremony. You would have loved it. Would have been nice to see it in person, I replied, voice flat. Oh, honey, don't be like that. You know how Amy's family is about their traditions? It's nothing personal. Nothing personal. Just my entire family celebrating a major life event without me, because of a tradition that was probably invented specifically to exclude me. But sure, nothing personal. Did anyone ask where I was? I asked. Silence. A few people. We just said you couldn't make it. No big deal. No big deal. My absence at my brother's wedding was no big deal. Good to know where I stood. 2 years later, Hannah announced her engagement. By then, I'd started to rebuild my life separate from my family. Focused on work, got promoted to senior support specialist with a $12,000 raise, started paying down my loans aggressively, made friends through work and gaming communities, built a life that didn't revolve around waiting for my family to notice me, picked up hobbies, started rock climbing at an indoor gym, joined a recreational soccer league, learned to cook actual meals instead of surviving on ramen and frozen pizzas, started dating here and there. Nothing serious, but it felt good to have people who actually wanted to spend time with me. Hannah's fiancé Brandon came from old money. His family owned a chain of car dealerships across 3 states. You know, those commercials with the guy yelling about prices and waving his arms. The engagement ring probably cost more than my annual salary. 3 carats, platinum band, custom designed by some jeweler who only worked with select clients. I'm so excited! Hannah gushed during our obligatory family dinner announcing the engagement. We're planning a spring wedding at the Riverside Country Club. It's going to be absolutely perfect. Brandon's family knows the owner, so we're getting the premium package. The Riverside Country Club charged $50,000 minimum for wedding packages. I'd looked into venues when my coworker got married there, just out of curiosity about how the other half lived. The cheapest package started at $50,000 and went up from there depending on how fancy you wanted to get. That sounds really nice, I said, genuinely trying to be happy for her. She was my sister. Despite everything, I wanted her to be happy. Thanks. And I wanted to ask you something. She looked at Mom and Dad, then back at me. Brandon and I are keeping the wedding really intimate. Just close family and friends. We're doing a destination reception in Cancun afterward for the extended celebration. My heart sank. I knew where this was going. Could feel it in my bones before she even finished the sentence. The thing is, Cancun's expensive, and we can only afford to bring immediate family to the resort. Mom, Dad, Tyler, Lily, and Owen are all coming, but we had to make some tough choices about who could join us for the week. Let me guess, I said flatly. I'm not invited. Hannah looked offended, like I'd accused her of something terrible instead of just stating the obvious. It's not like that. You're invited to the ceremony, just not the Cancun part. That's still something, right? You'll get to see me get married. Why not the reception? Brandon's family is paying for the Mexico trip. They have a budget. We couldn't include everyone we wanted to. Brandon's family was worth millions. They could have afforded to bring me along without even noticing the expense. This was a choice, not a budget issue. They'd sat down, made a list, and decided I didn't make the cut. So I can come to the wedding but not the actual celebration afterward? The ceremony is the important part, Mom interjected, using that reasonable tone that made me want to scream, that's where the vows happen. The reception is just a party. Just a party. The party where toasts happen, where families dance together, where memories are made and shared, The part where people actually celebrate instead of just witnessing. But sure, just a party I wasn't important enough to attend. How long is the Cancun trip? I asked. A week, Hannah said. We're staying at this gorgeous resort, all inclusive. Beach access, pools, water sports. It's going to be incredible. A week-long vacation that I wasn't invited to because of budget constraints from people who drove luxury cars and lived in houses with more bathrooms than I had rooms in my apartment. I went to Hannah's ceremony, wore my best suit, the one I'd bought on clearance at Men's Warehouse, and had tailored to fit properly. Brought an expensive gift, a crystal vase set that cost $200 and probably got regifted within a month. Smiled through the whole thing, even though it felt like swallowing glass and battery acid mixed together. Watched everyone else get on charter buses afterward, heading to the airport for a week in Cancun, while I drove home alone to my apartment. Sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, just staring at nothing, before finally starting the engine and leaving. Spent that week working overtime and picking up extra shifts. Figured if my family didn't want me around, I might as well make some money. Paid off another $1,500 of my student loans with that overtime pay, small victories. Lily got engaged 3 years after that. She was marrying her college boyfriend, Josh. Nice enough guy, worked in pharmaceutical sales making good money. They dated for 6 years before he finally proposed. One of those relationships where everyone kept asking, "When are you guys getting married?" at every family gathering. By this point, I'd been promoted again at work. Made $72,000 as an IT systems manager. Had my own apartment without roommates who stole my food. Was dating someone seriously for the first time in years. My girlfriend Rachel was a teacher at an elementary school. Smart and kind and patient in ways that amazed me. She actually seemed interested in building a future together, instead of just killing time until something better came along. When Lily called to tell me about the engagement, I felt nothing. No excitement, no happiness, just a tired resignation about what was coming next, like watching a movie for the third time and knowing exactly when the plot twist happens. That's great, Lily. Congratulations. Thanks. Josh and I are really excited we're planning a fall wedding. October, probably. Perfect weather. I wanted to talk to you about something, though. Here it comes. The speech. The excuses. The gentle letdown delivered with fake sympathy. Josh has a really big family. Like, huge. 8 siblings. Dozens of cousins. And my wedding party is already massive. 8 bridesmaids. We're trying to keep costs down, so we've had to make some tough decisions about the guest list. Don't worry, I said. I already know I'm not invited. Silence on the other end. Then, it's not that you're not invited. You're invited to the ceremony. It's just the reception venue has capacity limits and, let me save you the speech. Tyler had Amy's family superstitions. Hannah had the Mexico budget. What's your excuse this time? That's not fair, Jake. This is my wedding. I'm allowed to make choices about my guest list. You're absolutely right. Make whatever choices you want. Just don't expect me to pretend it doesn't hurt. Don't expect me to smile and nod and act like being excluded from my own sister's celebration is totally normal and fine. You're being dramatic. It's just a party. There it was again. Just a party. Like the celebration of your sister's marriage was equivalent to some random Tuesday barbecue instead of a major life event. Has it occurred to any of you that maybe I want to celebrate with my family too? That maybe being excluded over and over again actually hurts? We're not excluding you from the ceremony. The ceremony without the celebration is like being invited to watch a movie through a window. Sure, technically you're there, but you're not actually part of it. Hung up before she could respond. Didn't want to hear more excuses, more rationalizations, more explanations about why I wasn't important enough to be fully included. Owen actually reached out after that. Called me later that night, which surprised me because Owen usually stayed out of family drama. Lily told me what happened, he said. For what it's worth, I think it's messed up. Thanks for saying that. They're all like this. Tyler, Hannah, Lily, they've always treated you differently, and I never understood why you're the most successful one out of all of us, if you actually think about it. You did it all yourself. No handouts, no help, just grinding it out. That's actually impressive. That was probably the nicest thing any sibling had ever said to me. Almost made me emotional, which was ridiculous because it was just basic acknowledgement of reality. Are you coming to the wedding? I asked. Yeah, I kind of have to. Family obligation and all that. But I'll be thinking about you the whole time, if that helps. Maybe I'll skip the reception in solidarity. Don't do that. No point in both of us missing out. Just have a good time. For what it's worth, I don't think what they're doing is right. But I'm not brave enough to say anything I know that makes me kind of a coward. It makes you realistic. Saying something won't change anything. They'll just make your life difficult too. Didn't go to Lily's wedding? Sent a card with a small gift? $50? Which was all I felt like contributing to someone who couldn't be bothered to include me in the actual celebration. Spent that day with Rachel, went hiking at a state park about an hour away, had a nice dinner at this Italian place with amazing breadsticks. Made my own good memories instead of watching my family make more without me. The hiking trail was beautiful. Lots of fall colors, cool weather. Nobody around Rachel and I talked about everything except my family. Discussed where we wanted to travel, what kind of house we'd want someday, whether we wanted kids. Normal couple stuff that felt revolutionary because someone actually cared what I thought. Rachel noticed I was quieter than usual, despite my attempts to seem normal. You okay? My sister got married today. Oh, do you want to talk about it? Not really, but thank you for being here, for understanding. She squeezed my hand. Always. Your family doesn't deserve you. That night, I got a few texts from relatives asking where I'd been. Apparently, people noticed my absence. My aunt sent a message asking if I was sick. My cousin wanted to know if everything was okay. Didn't respond to any of them. If they really cared, they would have noticed the pattern years ago. Would have questioned why I kept being excluded. Would have said something. 6 months later, I proposed to Rachel. We'd been dating for 2 years by then. She'd met my family exactly twice. Once at a random Sunday dinner, where they barely acknowledged her existence beyond polite hellos, and once at a coffee shop where Hannah showed up, said hi to us for maybe 3 minutes, then left because she forgot she had errands to run. Rachel never complained about my family, never pushed me to include them more, or try harder to connect, just quietly observed the dynamics and made her own conclusions. Smart woman. She could read people better than most therapists. Proposed at the botanical gardens, where we'd had our first date 2 years earlier. Nothing elaborate. No musicians or photographers or rose petals. Just me, her, a ring I'd saved up for 6 months to buy, and a quiet spot by the pond where we used to sit and talk for hours. The ring was modest. 1 carat, white gold band, simple design. But it was within my budget, and she loved simple things anyway. The elaborate stuff never impressed her. She cared more about thoughtfulness than price tags. She said yes immediately, tears streaming down her face, hands shaking as I slid the ring on. I love you so much, she said. I can't wait to marry you. Same. Should we go tell my family? She paused, really thinking about it. Do you want to? Did I? After years of being excluded, forgotten, treated like the family placeholder who only mattered when they needed something? After 3 weddings where I wasn't important enough to be fully included? Not really, I admitted. Then let's wait. This is our moment. Let's enjoy it without anyone else's opinions or judgment. We kept the engagement quiet for 2 months. Told our friends, told Rachel's family, who immediately embraced me like I'd always been part of them, throwing a surprise engagement party with Rachel's entire extended family present. Her mom cried happy tears. Her dad shook my hand and said, "Welcome to the family," like he meant it. Rachel's parents were teachers, high school English and middle school science. They lived in a modest house and drove sensible cars and saved carefully for retirement. But they loved each other and their kids without conditions or favoritism. Watching them together showed me what family was supposed to look like. Started planning our wedding. The ceremony would be small. Rachel's immediate family, our close friends, maybe 30 people total. We'd rent out a small event space, have a nice dinner, keep everything intimate and meaningful instead of trying to impress people. What about your family? Rachel asked while we worked on the guest list one night, sitting at her kitchen table with notebooks and sticky notes scattered everywhere I stared at the paper in front of me. 5 names. Mom, Dad, Tyler, Hannah, Lily, Owen. The people who'd spent my entire life making me feel secondary, who'd excluded me from their biggest celebrations, who'd never once made me feel like I truly mattered. I don't think I want them there, I said slowly, testing how the words felt. Rachel nodded, no judgment in her expression. Okay, that's simple. Jake, they've treated you horribly for years. If you don't want them at your wedding, I support that completely. This is your day, our day. We get to decide who shares it with us. That's when I knew I was marrying the right person. She didn't try to talk me into including them or give speeches about family forgiveness, just supported my decision without question. Finally told my parents about the engagement during a family dinner 3 months later. Mom had been badgering me about attending these dinners, guilt-tripping me about family time and staying connected. Figured I'd tell them in person, get it over with, rip off the bandage. Rachel and I are engaged, I announced between the salad course and the main course, dropping it casually like I was commenting on the weather. Took them about 5 seconds to react. Mom's face lit up with surprise, and what looked like genuine happiness. Oh, honey, that's wonderful. When did this happen? 3 months ago. Dad raised his eyebrows, fork pausing halfway to his mouth. 3 months? Why didn't you tell us sooner? We wanted to enjoy it privately first, figure things out without outside input. Hannah jumped in, already making it about her. So when's the wedding? Please tell me you're not doing one of those long engagements. I hate waiting for weddings. The anticipation is exhausting. It's in 2 months. We wanted to keep it quick and simple. Tyler laughed, that dismissive sound he made when he thought something was stupid. 2 months? Good luck planning anything decent in that time frame. Most vendors book out a year in advance. We've already done most of the planning, small ceremony, close friends and family, nice dinner afterward, nothing complicated. Lily looked excited, already planning her outfit probably. That sounds lovely. Where are you having it? Please tell me it's somewhere fun. Maybe we can make a weekend trip out of it. This was the moment, the decision I'd spent 3 months thinking about, discussing with Rachel, losing sleep over. The choice that would either blow up my family or finally give me some peace. The Oakwood Event Center, I said. But actually, I should mention something important. Rachel and I decided to keep the wedding really intimate, immediate family only. Mom looked confused, not catching on yet. Right, that's us. When do you need our addresses for the invitations? When I say immediate family, I mean Rachel's immediate family and our closest friends. We're keeping it to about 30 people total. The table went silent. 5 faces staring at me with expressions ranging from confusion to dawning comprehension to growing horror. What does that mean exactly? Dad asked slowly, setting down his fork with deliberate care. It means you're not invited. Hannah gasped. Actually gasped like I'd announced someone died. Her hand flew to her chest in this theatrical gesture. You're joking! I'm not joking. Rachel and I want a small, intimate wedding with people who've consistently supported us. That doesn't include any of you. Tyler stood up, chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is ridiculous. We're your family. Really? Because I don't remember being family enough to attend your weddings? Any of them. Not fully, anyway. That was different, Hannah protested, voice rising. Those were special circumstances. Right. Tyler had superstitions. You had budget constraints. Lily had capacity limits. Well, I have special circumstances too. My special circumstance is that I don't want people who've spent years excluding me at the most important day of my life. Mom looked like she might cry, eyes getting red and watery. Jake, this is cruel. How can you exclude your own family from your wedding? How could you exclude me from 3 of theirs? We didn't exclude you, Dad said, trying to sound authoritative. You were invited to the ceremonies. Oh, how generous. I got to witness the vows but not celebrate with the family afterward. Got to watch through the window, but not actually participate. Really made me feel included and valued. Lily tried a softer approach, the reasonable sibling routine. Jake, I know we've made mistakes, but this is different. This is your wedding. You're supposed to have your family there. That's what makes it special. You're right, I am having my family there. Rachel's family. The people who actually treat me like I matter, who show up for me, who don't make excuses about why I'm not important enough to include. Owen, who'd been quiet this whole time, spoke up. I get it. Everyone turned to stare at him like he'd grown a second head. What? Tyler snapped. I get why he's doing this, Owen continued, looking uncomfortable but determined. We've all treated Jake like he's less important for years. Every wedding, every family event, he gets the short end. I'd be angry too. Stay out of this, Hannah hissed. No, someone needs to say it. We've been awful to him. All of us, including me sometimes. And now he's finally standing up for himself and we're acting like he's the problem? That's messed up. Thank God for Owen. At least one sibling had some self-awareness and basic decency. This is your mother's doing, Dad said, pointing at Mom across the table. You're the one who always babied them and let them get away with this favoritism nonsense. Don't blame me, Mom shot back, face flushing. You're the one who said we couldn't afford Jake's college but somehow found money for Tyler's new car and Hannah's credit card and Lily's sorority fees. They started arguing right there at dinner, voices rising, dredging up decades of parenting disagreements about who was responsible for 30 years of treating me like an afterthought, like I wasn't even in the room, like this whole disaster was about them instead of about what they'd done to me. I stood up, grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair. Rachel and I are leaving. Thanks for dinner. Jake, wait, Mom called. We need to discuss this. You can't just walk away. Nothing to discuss. Wedding's in 2 months. You're not invited. Don't show up. Walked out while they were still arguing. while Tyler was shouting something about family loyalty and Hannah was crying about being humiliated. Got in my car and drove straight to Rachel's apartment, where she was waiting with takeout and a movie queued up. "How'd it go?" she asked, taking one look at my face. "About as well as expected." They're furious. My parents started fighting about whose fault it is that I'm excluding them. Tyler threatened to show up anyway. What do you want to do? Nothing, they can be mad. I'm done caring what they think. The next few weeks were absolutely insane. My phone blew up with calls and texts. Mom crying about how I was destroying the family, dad demanding I be reasonable and stop being dramatic. Tyler threatening to show up anyway and cause a scene. Hannah trying to guilt trip me about setting a good example for the younger siblings. Lily sending long emotional messages about forgiveness and moving forward and how family is supposed to be forever. I blocked them all, changed my number. Done with the manipulation and guilt trips and attempts to make me feel like the bad guy. Extended family got involved naturally. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my wedding guest list. Got texts from my dad's brother saying I was being childish and petty. My mom's sister called Rachel directly, trying to convince her to talk sense into me. Rachel shut that down immediately, using her teacher voice that could stop a classroom riot. His family has treated him horribly for years. This is his decision and I support it completely. Please don't call again. Then she blocked the number. My cousin Brian, who I'd actually always gotten along with, reached out with a different approach. "Hey man, I heard what's going on. No judgment from me. Your family's always been kind of messed up about the favoritism thing. Everyone sees it. Good for you for setting boundaries." At least someone got it. Someone outside the immediate dysfunction could see what had been obvious for years. 2 weeks before the wedding, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. Just standing there when I got home from work, waiting by my door like door-to-door salespeople who wouldn't take no for an answer. "We need to talk," Dad said. "No, you need to leave. I have nothing to say to you." "Jake, please," Mom begged, and she actually looked terrible. Eyes red, face puffy, like she'd been crying for days. "Just hear us out. 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, against every instinct telling me this was a bad idea, I let them in. They sat on my couch looking uncomfortable and out of place, probably the first time they'd ever been in my apartment, despite me living there for 2 years. Mom started first, using that soft, reasonable voice. "We've been talking a lot these past few weeks. About everything. About how we've treated you over the years. And we realize we've made mistakes. Tyler's wedding, Hannah's reception, Lily's guest list. We should have stood up for you. Should have insisted you be included fully. We see that now." "You think?" The sarcasm came out sharper than intended, but I was too tired to care. 3 weddings. 3 separate occasions where you could have said something. Could have defended me. Could have made it clear I was important enough to be included, but you didn't. Dad jumped in, trying his usual authority approach. "We're here now. We're trying to make it right. We want to be at your wedding. We want to celebrate with you properly." Where was that energy when Tyler was planning his wedding? When Hannah was booking her Mexico trip? When Lily was finalizing her guest list? Where was this concern for my feelings then? "We thought you understood," Mom said weakly, hands twisting in her lap. "You always seemed so independent, so capable of handling things." "Understood what? That I'm less important than everyone else? That my feelings don't matter as much as Tyler's or Hannah's or Lily's?" "No, that's not. We never meant." She struggled to find words that would make this better, that would somehow erase 30 years of damage. "You've always been so independent, so capable. We thought you didn't need us as much as the others did. I didn't need you because you made it clear you weren't available. I learned to handle things myself because I had no choice. Because asking for help meant getting lectures about responsibility while watching you hand money to everyone else." They sat there looking miserable, and part of me wanted to relent, wanted to let them come to the wedding, be the bigger person, show mercy. But a larger part remembered every time they'd chosen someone else over me. Every birthday where my siblings got parties and I got a card. Every achievement they barely acknowledged while throwing celebrations for Tyler's mediocre accomplishments. Every wedding I wasn't fully invited to. "I'm not changing my mind," I said. "You're not coming to the wedding." "Jake? No. For once in my life, I'm the priority. My happiness, my day, my choices. You don't get a vote. You lost that privilege years ago." Dad's face hardened. "If we're not invited to your wedding, don't expect us to be part of your life going forward. This is your choice, but choices have consequences." Finally, something we agree on. You're right. Choices do have consequences. And the consequence of 30 years of favoritism and exclusion is that you don't get to be part of my biggest moment. They left eventually, Mom crying, Dad looking defeated and angry. And I felt absolutely nothing except a weird sense of relief, like removing a splinter that had been festering for years. The wedding day arrived. Rachel looked absolutely beautiful in her dress. Simple ivory, nothing fancy or over the top, just elegant and perfect for her. Her family had welcomed me with open arms from the start, her parents treating me like the son they'd always wanted. Her mom had spent the morning making sure every detail was perfect. Her dad kept cracking jokes to keep everyone relaxed. My side of the venue was filled with friends who'd stood by me, co-workers who'd become family over years of working together, people who showed up not out of obligation, but because they genuinely cared Chris was there, my old roommate who'd witnessed the worst of my family dysfunction, my gaming buddies who'd listened to me vent during late-night sessions, the guys from my soccer league who'd become real friends. Owen texted me that morning. "I know you said not to come, but I wanted you to know I'm thinking about you today. Congratulations, man. You deserve to be happy. I'm sorry for everything." It was the only message from my family that day, and it meant more than any of the others' protests or guilt trips or demands. The ceremony was perfect. Small, intimate, meaningful. Every person there wanted to be there. No obligation invites, no awkward family dynamics, no wondering if people were secretly judging us or just going through the motions. Rachel squeezed my hand during our vows. "I promise to always choose you first," she said, voice clear and steady. "To make you feel valued, important, and loved. Every single day, no conditions, no competition, no question about where you stand." I couldn't stop the tears. After 30 years of being second place in my own family, someone was finally putting me first. Someone saw me as the priority instead of the backup plan. The reception was exactly what we wanted. Good food, Italian, Rachel's favorite, good music from a playlist we'd spent weeks perfecting, people who actually celebrated our love instead of just going through the motions. Rachel's dad pulled me aside at one point, glass in hand. "I know your family situation is complicated," he said, "but I want you to know. You're our family now. All the way. No conditions, no hierarchy, no ranking system. You matter to us." Never had a father figure tell me I mattered before. Had to excuse myself to the bathroom to compose myself, splash water on my face, take some deep breaths. Around 9 p.m., my phone started buzzing. Texts from family members who'd heard through the grapevine that the wedding was happening right then. Mom sent a long message about how hurt she was, how she'd spent the day crying. How could I do this to her? Hannah called 3 times in a row. Tyler sent a text calling me selfish and immature and saying I'd regret this for the rest of my life. Turned off my phone and went back to my wife, and danced until my feet hurt. The aftermath was predictable. My parents tried reaching out repeatedly over the following weeks. Mom sent cards with emotional handwritten letters. Dad left voicemails that alternated between angry and pleading. They wanted to meet Rachel properly, wanted to start fresh, wanted another chance to be part of my life. I ignored most of it. Eventually sent one email explaining my position in detail. "For 30 years, you've made me feel like I was less important than my siblings. You allowed me to be excluded from major family events without defending me or standing up for me. You showed me exactly where I ranked in your priorities. Always last, always secondary, always disposable. Now I'm making the same choice for myself, prioritizing the people who've actually shown me love and respect. If that hurts, then you finally understand how I've felt my entire life. Actions have consequences. This is the consequence of your actions." Never got a response to that email. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. My brother's wife smirked at Thanksgiving and said, "Your parents only love you when you're paying their bills." My mom laughed and added, "You're not welcome unless you clear your brother's credit card debt." I stood up, smiled, and said, "You're right. And that's exactly why you'll never see me again." Their faces dropped when they realized they had just lost their favorite ATM forever. This happened over the past year, and I'm finally ready to share the whole story. It's long, but stick with me. The ending is absolutely worth it. Some details changed for privacy. TLDR at bottom for those who want the quick version, but you're missing out if you skip to it. I, 35 male, own a successful chain of fitness centers across North Texas, 4 locations with plans for 2 more by next year. We do about $1.2 million in revenue annually, and I employ around 50 people between trainers, front desk staff, maintenance crews, and administrative workers. Not bad for a guy who started with nothing but a GI Bill and a dream after getting out of the Marines at 23. But this story isn't about my business success or how I built my empire from scratch. It's about how my toxic, dysfunctional family tried to bleed me dry for years, and what happened when I finally decided to completely destroy them, instead of just walking away like a reasonable person would do. Growing up in suburban Dallas, my family dynamic was crystal clear from day one. There were two kids in our household, me and my younger brother Cameron. He's 32 now. Cameron was always the golden boy who could do absolutely no wrong in our parents' eyes, while I was permanently cast as the responsible one who never needed attention, help, or recognition. You know the type of family setup. Cameron got praised enthusiastically for tying his shoes correctly, while I had to earn everything through blood, sweat, tears, and perfect behavior. When I was 17 and a senior in high school, I was working 2 different part-time jobs after school every single day to save up money for a decent used car. I worked at a local grocery store bagging groceries and collecting shopping carts, and I also worked weekends at a landscaping company doing manual labor in the Texas heat. Meanwhile, Cameron got arrested for shoplifting video games at the local mall, and instead of facing any real consequences for his criminal behavior, my parents bought him a brand new Honda Civic to help build his confidence and self-esteem. When I asked where my car was after 8 months of saving every penny I earned, my dad looked at me and said, "You're more responsible and mature. You'll figure it out yourself like you always do." After high school graduation, I immediately joined the Marines because college wasn't financially possible for me. Our family was supposedly struggling financially and couldn't afford tuition. Meanwhile, Cameron magically got his full college experience courtesy of mom and dad's mysterious secret stash of money that somehow appeared out of thin air whenever their precious baby boy needed something important. I did 5 long years in the Marines, served 2 deployments overseas, and came back home with discipline, work ethic, and real-world experience. I used my GI Bill benefits to get a business degree while working full-time at a local gym chain, learning every aspect of the fitness industry from the ground up. I lived in a studio apartment that was basically a glorified closet, ate nothing but cheap pasta, canned tuna, and peanut butter sandwiches for 3 straight years, and saved every single penny I could to open my first gym location. Cameron? He dropped out of college after 3 years of constant partying, changing majors 4 different times, and maintaining a barely passing GPA. But according to my parents, that was just him finding his authentic path in life and exploring his creative options. By the time I turned 30, I owned 2 highly successful gyms, had purchased a nice house in a good neighborhood, and was systematically building real generational wealth. Cameron was 27 years old and had never held any job for more than 8 months total. His pattern was predictable. He'd get hired somewhere entry-level, work just long enough to qualify for unemployment benefits, then get himself intentionally fired and live off government assistance while looking for the right career opportunity. But guess who was still considered the family favorite? The guy who had never accomplished anything meaningful or productive in his entire adult life. Then Cameron met Jessica, and that's when our family situation went from merely annoying to absolutely insane. Jessica was literally every negative stereotype about materialistic, shallow women rolled into one insufferable person. She had fake chest implants, fake lip injections, fake eyelash extensions, and acrylic nails so long and elaborate she couldn't perform basic tasks like typing or opening car doors. She'd never worked a legitimate job in her entire life, but somehow always managed to have the newest iPhone model, designer purses worth thousands of dollars, and clothes that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. She attached herself to Cameron like a parasitic leech because he was stupid and naive enough to think he could somehow afford her ridiculously expensive lifestyle on his unemployment checks. And my parents? They absolutely loved her because she was supposedly motivating Cameron to be more ambitious and helping him mature into a responsible adult. Yeah, motivating him to find increasingly creative ways to spend money he didn't have and would never earn. The girl also had the intellectual capacity of a houseplant. I remember one particularly painful family dinner where she asked me if my fitness centers were like Planet Fitness, but more expensive, and then proceeded to confidently explain to me how the fitness industry worked, based entirely on what she'd seen in romantic comedies and reality TV shows. This brilliant analysis was coming from someone who genuinely believed that cardio exercise was harmful to your health because it makes you too skinny and weak. About 2.5 years ago, the phone calls from my parents started getting significantly more frequent and urgent. These weren't casual, "Hey, how's business going?" social calls, but rather direct, "Cameron needs help with his electricity bill" emergency calls, or "Cameron's car needs expensive repairs" crisis calls, or my personal favorite recurring theme, "Cameron and Jessica are having an unexpectedly difficult month financially" bailout calls. At first, the requested amounts were relatively small and seemingly reasonable. $400 here for utilities, $600 there for car problems. I'm not gonna lie, I helped out because I genuinely figured that's what family members do for each other during tough times, right? But every single time I transferred money to help them out, Cameron never once called me personally to express gratitude or explain the situation. It was always Mom making the initial request on his behalf, and Mom calling afterward to say thanks, like he was still a helpless child who couldn't handle his own communications. Then the requested amount started getting significantly larger, and the accompanying excuses became increasingly creative and elaborate. $1,200 for their deposit on a much nicer apartment because their current place was supposedly affecting Jessica's severe allergies. She wanted to live somewhere more Instagram-worthy. $2,800 when Cameron allegedly got laid off unexpectedly, which I later discovered actually meant he got fired for showing up 2 hours late 3 consecutive days while hungover. $3,500 when Jessica supposedly needed emergency dental work, which turned out to be purely cosmetic veneers because she wanted to become a social media influencer. The breaking point should have been last Christmas, when Jessica posted elaborate Instagram stories documenting her week-long luxury spa retreat in Scottsdale, complete with expensive treatments and designer shopping, during the exact same week that Cameron had called me crying and asking for $2,200 for urgent car repairs that couldn't wait. But I was still foolishly playing the good brother role like a complete idiot. The real wake-up call came 8 months ago, when I went to Mom and Dad's house for our regular Sunday family dinner. I walk through the front door, and Jessica is practically shoving her left hand in everyone's faces, showing off this absolutely enormous engagement ring that had to cost at least $20,000. "Look what my amazing Cameron surprised me with," she squealed like an overexcited teenager. "Isn't it absolutely perfect? I've been wanting something exactly like this for months and months." I looked directly at Cameron, who was desperately avoiding eye contact, like his life depended on it. 4 weeks earlier, he had called me crying genuine tears about needing $3,800 for unexpected medical bills, because he didn't have health insurance coverage. "That's quite an impressive ring," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Must have been a very significant purchase." Jessica giggled and did this ridiculous little hair flip gesture. "Oh, Cameron always finds a way to give me exactly what I deserve. He's so generous and thoughtful about showing his love. Yeah, generous with my hard-earned money and thoughtful about hiding it from me." During that same uncomfortable dinner, Jessica made several passive-aggressive comments about how some people just aren't relationship material, while staring directly at me with obvious judgment. I was 35 and single entirely by choice. I'd been too focused on building my business empire and securing my financial future to get serious about dating or marriage. But she acted like I was some kind of pathetic failure, because I wasn't married to someone who constantly spent my money. "Maybe you should focus less on those gym things and more on finding a wife," she said with this incredibly condescending smirk. "I mean, what's the point of making all that money if you don't have anyone special to spend it on?" My mom actually nodded in complete agreement, like Jessica was dispensing profound wisdom. "She makes a really good point, Alex. You can't work every single day forever." That night, lying in my own bed in my own house that I'd paid for with my own money, I made a firm decision. I was completely done being their personal bank account. Things got surprisingly quiet for a few months after I stopped responding to their increasingly desperate money requests. I genuinely figured maybe they'd finally learned their lesson about financial responsibility, or perhaps found some other gullible victim to fund their ridiculous fantasy lifestyle. I was incredibly, spectacularly wrong about both possibilities. Then Mom called exactly 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, and I should have immediately known something major was up based on her tone alone. "Alex, sweetheart," she said in that artificially sweet, overly cheerful voice she specifically reserves for when she wants something extremely important. "Are you planning to come for Thanksgiving dinner this year?" I'd been seriously considering skipping the whole thing entirely, to be completely honest. Every single family gathering felt like an exhausting theatrical performance, where I was forced to play the role of the successful son who should be endlessly grateful for the opportunity to solve everyone else's financial problems and personal crises. But I made the crucial mistake of saying yes, I would attend. "That's absolutely wonderful." Mom sounded way too relieved and excited for a simple holiday dinner invitation. "It'll be so nice to have the entire family together for such a special occasion." The excessive enthusiasm and obvious relief in her voice should have been my first major warning sign. Mom was never that genuinely excited about holiday dinners, unless there was some kind of significant hidden agenda involved. When I arrived at their house on Thanksgiving morning, Jessica answered the front door wearing what appeared to be a completely new outfit from head to toe that probably cost more than most people earn in an entire week. Her acrylic nails were freshly done with some kind of elaborate crystal and glitter design that must have required hours at an expensive salon. "Alex!" she exclaimed, with the most transparently fake smile I'd ever witnessed. "Oh my goodness, thank God you're finally here. We've been waiting and waiting for you to arrive." Red flag number 1 was practically waving frantically in my face. Cameron was positioned in the living room looking more nervous and anxious than I'd ever seen him in our entire lives together. When I walked into the room, he barely managed to look up from his phone screen, and his leg was bouncing rapidly, like he was extremely worried about something important happening. "Hey there, bro," he mumbled without making any eye contact whatsoever. Red flag number 2 was now joined by red flag number 1 in a growing parade of obvious warning signs. Dad was acting relatively normal, asking his usual surface-level questions about how business was going at the fitness centers, while Mom bustled around the kitchen, making unnecessarily dramatic gestures and movements. Everything seemed fairly normal and routine until we all sat down at the dinner table with our plates full. That's when Mom cleared her throat in that very specific way and gave me that particular look, the exact same expression she used to give me when I was a kid, and she was about to ask me to do extra household chores that Cameron somehow always managed to get excused from doing. "So, Alex," she said, while cutting her turkey with almost surgical precision and deliberate movements, "Cameron and Jessica have some really exciting news they want to share with the entire family. Here we go with whatever elaborate scheme they've cooked up this time." Cameron shifted uncomfortably in his chair like he was sitting on something sharp and painful. "We're getting married next month." "Congratulations," I said, though something felt seriously off about the rushed timing and urgency. Why the sudden need to get married so quickly? "It's going to be absolutely beautiful and perfect," Jessica gushed dramatically with obvious excitement. "Small ceremony, just immediate family members. Very intimate and romantic." Mom smiled with obvious pride and satisfaction. "They found the most perfect venue possible. Very elegant and sophisticated. I waited patiently because I knew from years of experience that there was always a catch with these people. The only thing is," Cameron finally said, while staring directly at his plate instead of looking at me, "we're running a little short on the deposit for the venue and all the catering expenses." And there it was, the real reason for this mandatory family dinner gathering. "How short are we talking exactly?" I asked, even though I already knew this was going to be completely unreasonable and outrageous. Cameron and Jessica exchanged one of those meaningful looks that couples share when they're about to tag team someone for money. Then Jessica leaned forward across the table, with this incredibly entitled smile that made my skin crawl with disgust. "It's honestly not that much money when you think about it," she said dismissively, waving her hand like she was discussing pocket change. "Just $22,000. I genuinely almost choked on the food in my mouth. $22,000? Well, Mom jumped in immediately, clearly having rehearsed this presentation. "When you actually break it down properly, it's really quite reasonable for a quality wedding. The venue rental is $6,000, professional catering is $10,000, floral arrangements are $3,000, and then there's the photographer, the musicians, the cake, and all the other essentials." "Hold on just a minute," I interrupted firmly. "You haven't actually paid for any of this stuff yet?" Jessica's fake smile got noticeably tighter around the edges. "We put down small deposits to hold everything, but all the full payments are due next Friday." I looked around the table slowly and deliberately. Everyone was watching me with expectant expressions, like this whole elaborate setup was already decided, and I was just going through the motions before opening my wallet and solving their problems. "And you want me to pay for your entire wedding?" "Not pay for it exactly," Cameron said quickly, trying to sound reasonable. "Just help out significantly. You know, as a generous wedding gift from my successful big brother." Jessica actually laughed out loud, and it was honestly the most condescending sound I'd ever heard in my entire life. "I mean, what else would you spend your money on anyway? You don't have a wife or children or any real family responsibilities. Your parents only love you when you pay their bills." The entire room went completely silent. Even my parents looked genuinely uncomfortable with how directly and brutally she'd just insulted me. I set down my fork very carefully and leaned back in my chair, staring at my mother. "Is that true, Mom?" Instead of denying it, Mom actually smiled and nodded. "Well, if you're not willing to help family, then you can't come to family events anymore. You can't come unless you pay off your brother's credit card." The words hit me like a physical blow. After everything I'd done, all the money I'd given them over the years, this was how they really saw me. Not as a son or brother, but as a wallet. I stood up slowly, grabbed my jacket, and smiled back at her. You know what? You're absolutely right, and that's why you'll never see me again. The change in the room was immediate and dramatic. Mom's confident smile vanished instantly. Dad's face went white. Cameron looked like he'd been slapped. Jessica's smug expression faltered as she realized what had just happened. Their faces completely dropped when they realized they had just lost me forever. Wait, Alex, I didn't mean... Mom started, but I was already walking toward the door. Yes, you did mean it, and now you get to live with it. And I walked straight out the front door without looking back. For 3 solid weeks after that Thanksgiving disaster, my phone was constantly buzzing with incoming messages from every family member. Long guilt-tripping text messages from Mom about how disappointed and hurt she was by my selfish behavior at dinner. Multiple voicemails from Dad lecturing me extensively about family loyalty and stepping up when it really matters. Even several pathetic messages from Cameron, though he was mostly just whining about how I was ruining his special day and destroying his happiness. But the absolute best and most entertaining messages came directly from Jessica herself. This woman sent me literal multi-paragraph essays about how I was a selfish, bitter person who was obviously jealous of Cameron's happiness and success in life. She called me pathetic for being single at my age, strongly suggested I was probably gay, and finished with increasingly vague threats about how I'd definitely regret this decision when Cameron becomes wildly successful. The irony was absolutely incredible. She was calling me jealous while literally begging for my money to fund her expensive lifestyle and fantasy wedding. I carefully screenshotted every single message she sent me and saved them in a dedicated folder. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, all the messages stopped completely. I genuinely figured they'd either found some other gullible victim to fund their ridiculous wedding, or maybe they'd finally decided to have a much smaller ceremony they could actually afford with their own limited resources. I was completely wrong about both possibilities, as usual. 4 weeks later, my friend who works as a loan officer at a major regional bank called me with some very interesting and concerning information. Hey, weird thing happened at work today, he said casually. I saw your brother and his fiancée at our main branch earlier this afternoon. My stomach immediately dropped with dread. What were they doing there? They were asking about substantial business loans. But here's the strange part. They were using your fitness centers as collateral and financial references. My blood went ice cold. What exactly do you mean by that? They had official-looking paperwork claiming Cameron was a 50% business partner in your company. The loan officer who met with them was immediately suspicious because the documents looked potentially fraudulent, so they didn't approve anything. But I thought you should definitely know about this situation. I hung up immediately and called my business lawyer. After some investigation and research, we discovered that Cameron and Jessica had been systematically attempting to secure substantial loans all across the Dallas metropolitan area, using completely forged documents claiming Cameron was a major owner of my fitness center chain. They'd even created elaborate fake employment records showing Cameron as my director of operations, earning $85,000 annually. They were actively attempting to commit serious fraud using my business reputation, credit history, and financial standing. That's when I realized that these people had crossed a line they could never come back from, and I needed to completely destroy them instead of just walking away and ignoring the situation. I spent the next 6 weeks methodically gathering every piece of information I could find about their situation. I didn't hire any private investigators or do anything overly dramatic. I just started paying very close attention to details and asking the right questions to the right people in my network. First, I discovered that the wedding was definitely still happening despite their obvious financial problems. They'd somehow managed to scrape together enough money for a small ceremony at some budget venue outside the city limits. But here's what was particularly interesting. Jessica was telling everyone on her social media accounts that they'd chosen to have an intimate wedding, and that certain people who weren't supportive of their love weren't invited to attend. She was actually spinning my refusal to fund their wedding as me being deliberately excluded from their special day. Then I uncovered something extremely interesting about Jessica's background. My banker friend mentioned that Jessica had visited his branch several months earlier when she and Cameron first started dating seriously. She'd attempted to open a business account for some multi-level marketing scheme, and during the standard credit check process, several major red flags had appeared on her financial history. I asked him to dig a little deeper into her background information. Banks share data with each other, and he owed me a significant favor from when I'd helped him get an excellent deal on gym equipment for his home workout room. What we discovered was absolutely incredible and eye-opening. Jessica had quite the documented financial history with men. She'd been married before, not once but twice previously. Both times to men with substantial money and assets, both marriages lasting just long enough for her to gain legal access to their financial accounts and property, and both ending in extremely nasty divorce proceedings, where she walked away with significant portions of their assets while claiming various forms of emotional and physical abuse. Cameron was going to be husband number 3, and he had absolutely no idea about any of this history. But that wasn't even the most interesting discovery I made. The most fascinating part was what I learned about their current financial situation through various sources. Remember all those emergencies and unexpected expenses that Cameron had been asking me to help with over the past 2 years? Well, those emergencies were real in a certain sense. Cameron had been getting deeper and deeper into serious debt, trying to maintain Jessica's ridiculously expensive lifestyle and spending habits. But instead of cutting back on expenditures or having honest conversations about money, they'd been taking out payday loans with outrageous interest rates, opening new credit cards constantly, and borrowing money from anyone who would lend it to them. They weren't just regular broke, they were catastrophically, devastatingly broke. The kind of financial situation where you're literally one missed payment away from losing absolutely everything you have. And Jessica? She had no clue whatsoever about their real situation. Cameron had been desperately hiding their actual financial condition from her, while frantically trying to find new ways to keep the money flowing and maintain the illusion of financial success and stability. That's when I realized Cameron wasn't just the spoiled golden child anymore. He was completely trapped, probably terrified, and definitely in way over his head with a woman who would completely destroy him the instant she discovered he couldn't afford her lifestyle anymore. So I decided to dramatically accelerate that inevitable discovery process. The wedding was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in February. I obviously didn't attend the ceremony, but I had much more important and strategic plans for that weekend anyway. You see, I'd spent several weeks carefully putting together a comprehensive information package that would change everything. Screenshots of Jessica's insulting text messages calling me pathetic and jealous. Complete copies of all the fraudulent loan documents they'd attempted to use with my business information forged on them. And the absolute crown jewel of evidence, a detailed background report on Jessica's 2 previous marriages, her well-documented history of financial manipulation and gold digging, and complete documentation of their current catastrophic debt situation. But I didn't send any of this damaging information to Cameron directly. That approach would have been too easy and predictable, and he probably wouldn't have believed any of it coming from me anyway, given our family dynamics. Instead, I sent the entire comprehensive package directly to Jessica's mother with detailed explanations. Here's what my thorough research had revealed about Jessica's family background and situation. They were legitimately old money wealthy, but absolutely obsessed with social status, public appearances, and family reputation. Her father was a successful investment banker at a prestigious firm, and her mother was one of those high society country club women who cared more about maintaining their family's social standing than anything else in the world. They'd been financially supporting Jessica for years without question, but they were operating under the impression that she was in a committed relationship with someone financially successful and stable with good prospects. They had no idea that Cameron was completely broke and drowning in debt, and they definitely had no knowledge whatsoever of their daughter's well-documented history of systematically marrying men specifically for their money and assets. I sent the complete information package to her mother with a simple, straightforward note. I thought you should know exactly who your daughter has married and what kind of financial situation she's actually gotten herself into. The wedding ceremony took place on Saturday afternoon. By Monday morning at 8 a.m. sharp, my phone was ringing insistently. It was Cameron, and he sounded more completely destroyed than I'd ever heard another human being sound in my entire life. "Alex," he said, and his voice was literally shaking with raw emotion. "I desperately need to talk to you about something extremely important." "What's going on, Cameron? Can you possibly meet me somewhere today? Please? I'll pay for coffee or lunch or whatever you want." He sounded so completely broken and utterly defeated that I almost felt genuinely sorry for him. Almost. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near my main gym location. When Cameron showed up 30 minutes later, he looked like he hadn't slept properly in several days. His eyes were completely bloodshot, his hands were visibly shaking, and he kept looking around nervously like he was afraid someone dangerous might be following him. "She's completely gone," he said, without any preamble or greeting. "Who's gone?" "Jessica. She left me permanently, took absolutely everything valuable and just disappeared." I raised an eyebrow with genuine curiosity. "Everything?" Cameron nodded miserably. all the wedding gifts we received, the money her parents had given us for the honeymoon, even our security deposit for the apartment. She cleaned out our joint bank account down to the very last penny and vanished completely. What exactly happened over the weekend? Her parents called her early Sunday morning while we were still at the hotel. They'd somehow gotten incredibly detailed information about our real financial situation, about my actual employment situation and our debts. They flew down here immediately and had this massive, screaming confrontation with her in the hotel lobby. Cameron ran his hands through his hair frantically and repeatedly. She tried desperately telling them it was all lies and misinformation from jealous people, but then they started asking very specific questions about money, about my employment history, about all our credit card debts and loans, and she suddenly realized the complete truth about everything. She realized you're completely broke and have been lying to her. Worse than just broke. We owe over $50,000 in credit cards, payday loans, and personal debt from friends. Her parents immediately cut her off financially and told her she was completely on her own from now on. And Jessica, he laughed with absolutely no humor whatsoever. She looked directly at me and said, I definitely didn't sign up to be poor and struggle, and just walked out of my life forever. I sipped my coffee calmly and waited patiently for him to continue with his story. Alex, I'm completely screwed beyond repair. Like, absolutely and totally ruined beyond any hope of recovery. The apartment rent is due this week, all the credit card minimum payments are due, and I literally cannot make any of them. I'm going to lose everything I have left. What about mom and dad? Can't they help you out? Cameron's face completely crumpled with shame and embarrassment. They don't know how catastrophically bad the real situation actually is. They think I just need help with a few monthly bills and regular expenses. If they knew the actual truth about everything, he trailed off helplessly. They'd be disappointed in you? They'd completely disown me forever and never speak to me again. You know exactly how Dad feels about financial irresponsibility and poor life choices. I almost started laughing at the incredible irony of the situation. Dad claimed to hate financial irresponsibility above all else, but he'd been directly enabling Cameron's terrible decisions for years and years without even realizing what he was doing. Cameron looked up at me with the most desperate, pleading eyes I'd ever seen from another human being. I know I've completely messed up everything in my life. I know I've been a terrible brother to you for years. But I'm literally begging you, Alex. Please help me one more time. I need your help more than I've ever needed anything in my entire life. How much help are we talking about exactly? $50,000 minimum. Maybe 60 to get completely clear of everything and start over with a totally clean slate. I leaned back in my chair thoughtfully and studied his desperate face. $60,000. To clean up a disaster that should never have happened in the first place if he'd made even one responsible decision. You know what, Cameron? You're absolutely right about some things. You did completely mess up everything, and you have been a terrible brother to me for most of our adult lives. His face fell with crushing disappointment and despair. But more importantly than any of that, you've been a user and a parasite for your entire adult life. For years and years, you've treated me like your personal ATM machine that exists solely for your benefit. You've never once asked how I'm doing personally or professionally, never offered to help me with anything whatsoever, never even bothered to say thank you when I bailed you out of your various messes and crises. Alex, please, I'm literally begging you on my knees. I'm not finished talking yet. My voice was ice cold now. You married a gold-digging manipulator who insulted me repeatedly in our parents' house and then tried to commit serious fraud using my business reputation and credit. You've spent years systematically taking advantage of my success while contributing absolutely nothing to this family except constant problems, drama, and financial emergencies. Cameron was openly crying now, with real tears streaming down his face. I know everything you're saying is completely true. I'll change totally. I swear on everything holy. I'll get a real job immediately. I'll pay you back every single penny with interest. I'll do whatever you want me to do. No, you won't change. I stood up and put on my jacket deliberately. You know why you won't actually change? Because you've never actually had to face real consequences. Every single time you've screwed up your life completely, someone has been there to fix it for you without question. Mom, Dad, me. We've all been enabling your pathetic, irresponsible behavior for decades. I looked down at him, completely pathetic and broken in his chair like a defeated child. So here's exactly what's going to happen moving forward. You're going to go home and figure this entire mess out completely by yourself. You're going to get any job you can possibly find and work your way out of this financial hole $1 at a time over many years. And maybe if you actually learn something meaningful from this experience and demonstrate real change, In a few years, we can discuss having some kind of genuine relationship. Alex, please don't do this. I'm your brother. No, I said firmly, walking toward the door without looking back. You're my parents' son. There's a significant difference between those two things. And I walked away from him forever. 6 months later, I heard through Mom that Cameron had filed for bankruptcy and was living in a tiny studio apartment across town, working double shifts at a warehouse loading trucks for minimum wage. Jessica had married some corporate lawyer she'd met on a dating app within 2 months of leaving Cameron. Mom and Dad kept pressuring me relentlessly to help him out financially, to be the bigger person, and forgive family because blood is thicker than water. I told them exactly the same thing I told Cameron. Some crucial life lessons can only be learned through direct personal experience and consequences. Cameron still calls me occasionally now, maybe once every few weeks. He's not asking for money anymore. He finally learned that particular lesson the hard way. He's just trying to check in and slowly rebuild some kind of relationship from absolute scratch. The conversations are incredibly awkward and stilted, but maybe that's exactly how genuine change and growth has to start. My mom banned my son's 9th birthday because my sister's kids didn't feel special enough. So we packed that night and disappeared. A year later, the cousins saw how happy my kid was, and my sister couldn't handle it. The meltdown that followed shattered the family. Hey, Reddit. I never thought I'd be airing family drama online, but here we are. I need to get this off my chest. Grab your popcorn and listen to this train wreck. It gets worse than you think. By the way, I'm dyslexic. Sorry if I stumble through some words. Bear with me, please. I'm Owen, 37 male. A licensed general contractor making solid money, enough to live a comfortable life. Here's the thing about being the family workhorse. Nobody notices you're carrying all the weight until you just stop. And by then, they're too busy blaming you. Before anything, let me give you a quick background so you understand the family dysfunction. My older sister Kylie is what you get when participation trophies meet pure delusion. She's a freelance makeup artist, which basically means she does maybe 3 weddings a year and acts like she runs a Fortune 500. Always talking about building my empire, from her McMansion that her husband's tech salary pays for. Everything with her is a performance. I don't even hate her, honestly. That would take way more energy than she deserves. But I stopped respecting her around the time she told someone at a family dinner she was self-made, while I was literally on a ladder installing her whole security system, for free. The lack of self-awareness was impressive. Mom kept score like she was running a casino. Every little success got tallied up, but the game was rigged from day one. Kylie could post a selfie and Mom would act like she just cured cancer. I could wire an entire house and get a "you're good with your hands, son." Dad was somehow worse because he pretended not to pick sides. Switzerland in cargo shorts. He'd watch Mom play favorites and just sit there, except for occasionally mumbling, "Now, honey," when it got too obvious. Just enabling the whole thing while calling it peacekeeping. This pattern started when we were kids. I'm talking like 10 years old watching Kylie get private tennis lessons while I'm out mowing lawns for $5. Mom said it was teaching me work ethic. Right. Kylie needed lessons to develop her talents. I needed character building through manual labor. Funny how that works. By 15, I was doing handyman work for cash under the table. That's actually where I learned the trade. This old guy who hired me, Vince Caruso, built like a fire hydrant, could frame a wall faster than most people could measure one. He taught me that electrical systems don't lie. They either work or they don't. I met my wife Anna at a service call. Midnight on a Thursday, her security system was freaking out, and the alarm company couldn't figure it out remotely. When I showed up, she offered me cold pizza and apologized for the mess in her living room. We got married at the courthouse with grocery store flowers and her roommate as witness. The photos look terrible. The memory's perfect. Kylie married Colin at some resort in Napa. Full videographer, signature cocktail, one of those dessert walls with like 14 options and a hashtag that rhymed. Mom cried and told everyone it was the pinnacle of her motherhood. At my wedding, she took one photo and bounced before we even cut the cake. So when Evan was born, I held him in that hospital room and had this crystal clear moment. My entire job is to make sure this kid never feels like a footnote in someone else's story. We don't have much, but we've got rules. Don't lie. Don't keep score. Don't let people weaponize kindness against you. My family runs on small favors that aren't actually small. Install Kylie's doorbell and cameras. Fix Dad's garage opener and get it on Wi-Fi. Pick up takeout because Kylie's makeup client ran late. Babysit the cousins because Kylie has a consultation. At first, I said yes to everything because that's what you do, right? You keep the peace. You pay the family tax. But the tax kept going up and I never got a receipt. So I started tracking it, to have proof that I wasn't crazy about how lopsided this whole thing was. January through August last year, 42 hours of labor, parts and materials, $378. Reimbursed, $0, 0 cents. 0 thank yous that didn't immediately get followed by another request. The worst part? They'd just schedule me like I was on their payroll. Text at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Can you come by at 9? Garage door opener died. No, if you're free or when you have a chance. Just straight up expectations. And if I said I had Evan's soccer game? Well, can you come after? It'll only take 20 minutes. It never took 20 minutes. Minimum an hour, usually 2 once they started with the while you're here additions. And Evan's game would be over by the time I finished. He'd ask where I was during his goal. I'd say family emergency. He'd just nod like he understood. But that look in his eyes, like he already knew he wasn't the priority, that haunted me. Mom kept saying they'd settle up at Christmas. Then it was after Kylie's launch. Then, things are tight right now. Meanwhile, Kylie's showing up to family dinner with a new makeup kit. But it's not even about the money. It's the assumption behind it all. Our schedule's negotiable, theirs is set in stone. Evan's needs are flexible, their kids' feelings are like constitutional rights. Our boundaries are selfish, their demands are family obligations. Last year we tried doing a joint birthday party for Evan's 8th. It made sense, Mom said. The cousins should celebrate together. Sharing meant Evan basically faded into the background while Kylie's kids ran the show and got a cake. I watched Evan blow out his candles, 3 out of 8, because Kylie's kids wanted to help, and something in me just cracked. Evan asked me later if joint meant not really mine, and Anna cried in our bathroom. I stood outside that door staring at the smart thermostat I'd installed in my parents' house and thought about sending them an invoice for emotional damages. I didn't, though. Felt too small. Also pointless. Meanwhile, they'd been auditing my worth since I could walk, but somehow that was just family standards. I was about to find out exactly how messed up those standards really were. Saturday morning, the day before Evan's 9th birthday, I swing by my parents' place to borrow their folding tables for the party. We needed extras for food and gifts. Dad's in his recliner doing his best impression of furniture. TV on but muted. That's his default setting when things are about to explode. Mom's in the kitchen making coffee. The air's got that pre-fight tension where everyone knows what's coming. Kylie's there too, sitting at the counter scrolling through emails. She glances up when I walk in, does this weird smirk thing, and goes right back to her phone. Mom sets a mug down hard enough to make her point clear. We need to talk about tomorrow. I just wait. Let the silence do the heavy lifting. You're going to have to postpone Evan's party. What? I asked. Kylie's kids saw the decorations you bought. They're upset. A big celebration for Evan right now would just create conflict. It's not appropriate. The words land like someone threw a brick through a window. It's 5 kids, hot dogs, and a cake from Costco, I say. Voice completely flat. We're not booking out Disneyland here? Kylie jumps in without even looking up from her phone. It's not about the party, Owen. It's about being sensitive. My kids are going through a lot right now. They don't need to feel less than. Less than what? I ask. A 9-year-old's birthday party? They're dealing with the separation, Kylie says, finally looking up. Colin moved out 2 weeks ago. The kids are devastated. And here you are planning this big celebration like nothing's wrong. I blink at her. So my kid doesn't get a birthday because your marriage fell apart? Her face goes red. That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said. Mom does her guilt trip voice. If you insist on going forward with this, selfishly, then don't bring him here afterward. We won't reward that kind of behavior. Reward what behavior? I ask. Celebrating my son? Causing unnecessary pain to your nieces and nephews? Mom says. Family comes first, Owen. Sometimes that means making sacrifices. I've been sacrificing for this family my entire life, I say. Evan hasn't. He's 9. He gets a party. Dad clears his throat and sits there like a decorative plant. Completely useless. Something clicks in my brain right then. Not anger. Recognition. I see the whole pattern laid out like a blueprint. My kid's happiness is somehow a threat to their whole ecosystem. The math is completely messed up and always has been. Okay, I say. Super calm. I hear you. I leave the tables right where they are and walk out. Don't slam the door. The silence says plenty. In the truck, I just sit there for 5 minutes with my hands on the wheel. My phone buzzes. Kylie, don't be dramatic. We can celebrate him next month. I turn the phone off. That night, I'm sitting at our kitchen table with Anna. Evan's asleep. They said no to the party, I tell her. She puts down her phone. What do you mean no? Kylie's kids saw the decorations. Mom said if we do it anyway, we're cut off. No visits, no family contact. Anna goes quiet for a long time. Then, what do you want to do? I want to throw my kid his party, I say. And I want to stop negotiating for the basic right to celebrate my own son. Then let's do that. The messages start at 9:40 p.m. Dad first. Let's think this through. Kylie next. Don't make everything so difficult, okay? Then Mom. If you proceed with this party, do not bring Evan to our home again. We cannot support your disrespect. I screenshot everything. Create a folder labeled Evidence. Turn my phone off. Anna and I sit in our kitchen, and I feel something I haven't felt in years. Clarity. Sunday morning, Evan wakes up yelling about being 9 and wearing his favorite shirt inside out because he's too excited to check. We frost the cake together. At 8:52 a.m., Mom calls. I let it ring. 9:15 Kylie. 9:30 Dad. The call log looks like a hostage situation, but I'm too busy tying balloons to a fence post to give a single care. Time to throw my son a party and watch my family completely lose it. We set up at the community park near our apartment. Reserved the pavilion for $60. Hung a banner that said, Evan's 9th in letters he'd colored himself. Brought a cooler full of drinks, hot dogs on a portable grill, and that Costco cake. Kids start rolling in around 11 a.m. Kylie must have seen the park name on the RSVP text chain Colin was still on, because they walked in like they owned the place. Shy hellos that turn into total chaos within like 10 minutes. Soccer in the grass, tag around the trees, that specific brand of joyful screaming, normal kid activities. At 11:20, I see them at the entrance. Mom walks in first. Kylie behind her, Colin trailing along with their kids, looking like he'd rather be literally anywhere else. It was Colin's custody weekend, and Kylie voluntold him to come for the kids. Dad brings up the rear doing his Switzerland routine. Uninvited, uninformed, completely undeterred. Evan runs over and grabs my hand, his palms sticky with frosting. I squeeze back. Mom surveys the setup like she's a health inspector. The paper plates, the gas station cooler, the homemade decorations. Her face does that thing where she's disappointed but trying to look concerned instead. Owen, she says, voice carrying across the whole pavilion. We warned you about the consequences. This is Evan's party, I say. Calm as still water. Kylie steps forward with her phone up. Look, I'm not trying to cause drama here, but this is incredibly selfish. My kids have been crying all morning. All morning, Owen. Because you had to prove a point. I'm celebrating my son's birthday, I say. That's not a point. Mom tries the guilt angle. Her signature move. After everything we've sacrificed for you? Sacrificed what? I ask. She blinks like I just asked her to solve calculus on the spot. We raised you. We gave you opportunities. You gave Kylie opportunities. You gave me chores. Don't mix things. One of Evan's friend's moms is watching this whole thing go down. Soccer mom type with a minivan and sensible shoes. She catches my eye and mouths, You okay? I nod. She positions herself between Mom and the kids. Kylie jumps in. Oh my God, are you seriously playing the victim card at a children's birthday party? I'm playing the host card, I say. At my son's party. That you weren't invited to. Colin clears his throat. Hey man, can we let's be adults about this. I am being an adult, I say. I planned a party for my kid. You guys showed up uninvited and tried to make it about yourselves. Clear who needs to act like adults. Mom's eyes widened. How dare you speak to us this way? Dad tries to step in. Son, maybe we should all just take a breath. Don't son me, I say. You sat there for 37 years watching this happen and said nothing. You don't get to play mediator now. The kids have all stopped playing, just standing there in awkward silence, watching adults absolutely ruin a perfectly good Saturday. I hate that, but I also know this needs to happen. I crouch down to Evan. You okay, buddy? He nods. You want them to stay? He looks at his cousins, then at Kylie, then back at me. I just want everyone to have fun. Smart answer. Diplomatic. He's 9 and already better at this than any of us. I stand back up. Look right at my mother. You can stay and behave like guests. Or you can leave. You're giving us an ultimatum? She asks. Voice shaking with that manufactured hurt. I'm stating boundaries. If that feels like an ultimatum, that says way more about you than me. Kylie tries to storm closer, but Colin catches her arm. She yanks free. You know what? Fine. Enjoy your little party. When your son asks why he doesn't have a relationship with his grandparents, you can explain how your ego is more important than family. When he asks, I say, I'll show him the screenshots of you threatening to cut him off if I celebrated his birthday. I'll let him decide who actually valued family. Her face goes completely red. Mom looks like someone just slapped her. Dad's just staring at his shoes. I turn to the kids. Who wants hot dogs? The pavilion fills with enthusiastic yelling. Mom's standing there frozen. Then she snaps. If you walk away from us like this, don't come back. Ever. We won't be disrespected in front of children. We won't be blackmailed in front of them either, I say. Kylie films herself walking toward the exit, probably already drafting the victim post in her head. You'll regret this, she says over her shoulder. I regret wasting 42 hours of labor on your whole house automation, I say. This actually feels pretty good. Kylie storms off first. Mom and Dad follow in a huff. Colin hangs back long enough to tell the kids they can stay, then slips out. We eat hot dogs. Somebody spills lemonade. Somebody scores a goal and does a backflip. Life just reboots like nothing happened. When the last kid leaves, Anna leans against me. I'm proud of you. I exhale for what feels like the first time all day. Colin shows up like an hour later to get his kids. Kylie left without them. He apologizes. Says the separation is getting messier. Says Kylie's been spiraling since he moved out. He laughs. Sad laugh. Then he says something that sticks with me. She kept telling me you owed her. For being family. For existing. Like you were the jerk for wanting to get paid for skilled labor. I started actually doing the math on what she was spending versus what she was bringing in, and nothing added up. You're better off, I say. So's my bank account, he says. And my blood pressure. That night, I started thinking. I knew we couldn't stay in this apartment that's only 15 minutes from their house. Not where they could just show up whenever they felt entitled to. Not where every grocery run risked an ambush. We clean up the pavilion, take our leftover cake home. That night, I'm sitting on our balcony that overlooks a parking lot, and I realize something important. We need to disappear. Completely. Time to go ghost. We pack like we're fleeing a crime scene. 2 duffel bags, 1 backpack, Evan's favorite Lego sets. Anna grabs our important documents. I take my tool bag and invoice book. Everything else can get replaced or just left behind. I call Vince, the old contractor who taught me the trade. Tell him we need somewhere to crash for a week, maybe 2. He doesn't ask questions. Just gives me the address to a rental property he owns on the east side of town. Says the tenant just moved out, and we can stay there while he looks for someone new. No rent, he says. Just keep it clean and fix anything that breaks. We leave our apartment at dawn. Don't tell the landlord. Don't forward our mail. We ate the deposit and a lease break fee that hit 2 weeks later. Paid it and called it tuition for Peace and Quiet 101. So we load up the truck and drive across town like we're entering witness protection. Vince's place is a 2-bedroom above a tattoo parlor. The stairs creak. The windows don't seal quite right, but it's 30 miles from my parents' house, and that makes it absolutely perfect. The buzz of tattoo guns and the smell of antiseptic become our new normal. Evan thinks it's cool. Anna says it has character. I say it has distance. The family reaction comes in waves. Week 1, 34 missed calls from Mom, 19 from Dad, 12 from Kylie. Unknown numbers that turn out to be cousins and aunts recruited for the guilt campaign. Voicemails ranging from concerned to straight-up threatening. Where are you? We're worried about Evan's well-being. This is abusive behavior, Owen. You're tearing this family apart. I save everything. Label it weather report. One voicemail from Mom really stands out. Your father fell yesterday. Had to call Kylie because we couldn't reach you. What if it had been serious? What if he died and you missed it because of your pride? I call Vince. Did my dad fall? Saw him at the hardware store this morning, Vince says. Looked fine to me. Was buying mulch. Lying to manufacture emergencies. Classic move. Week 2, the financial ambush. Mom texts me a spreadsheet. An actual Excel document. Itemized loans she claims I owe her. It includes birthday gift 2019, $50, now classified as loan. Thanksgiving groceries, $87. Emergency assistance, $200. I rewired their entire electrical panel for free. Christmas presents, $840. Apparently gifts are loans now. Total claimed $2,337. With reasonable interest, $3,150. I screenshot it. Add it to weather report. Text back. Send me an itemized invoice for every hour I worked for free. We can settle the difference. She doesn't respond, but I do the math anyway. Sit at Vince's kitchen table with my invoice book and a calculator. Every job I can remember. Every repair. Every installation. Every quick favor that turned into 3 hours. 42 hours of labor at my current rate of $110 per hour. $4,620. Parts and materials. $378. Family discount, that was actually just free labor, $4,998. I don't bill them, but I keep the invoice. File it with weather report, just in case. Week 3, the smear campaign. Kylie posts some quote about setting boundaries with toxic family members over a sunset photo. 3 people comment hearts. 1 person comments, staying strong for your babies. Then she posts a whole carousel of photos from her kids' healing journey, therapy sessions, art projects about feelings, a vision board about rebuilding after family trauma. The comments section is a piece of work. Everyone feels terrible for her. Poor Kylie, abandoned by her brother. Nobody mentions the 42 hours. Nobody mentions the threats. Nobody mentions my son's birthday. I stay completely off social media. Delete the apps. Block their numbers. Our new life has a rhythm to it. Mornings. Walk Evan to his new school 6 blocks away. Mrs. Lee runs the corner deli and starts giving Evan free apple juice boxes. Your boy has good manners, she says once. That compliment means more than any family dinner ever did. Afternoons, service calls. I raise my rates by $15 and stop apologizing for it. Charge extra for same-day service. Add a weekend premium. Funny thing happens. People just pay. Without complaint. Because professionals charge professional rates. Evenings. Homework at a folding table I found on Craigslist for $10. Pasta 4 nights a week because it's cheap and Evan doesn't complain. Soccer in the park. I take every contracting job I can get. Stop undervaluing myself. And here's the thing. Once you stop doing that, other people stop too. I also implement a new policy. When family texts asking for help, I send a standard reply. Happy to help. Rate is $110 per hour. Weekend rate $140. Payment required upfront via Venmo. Mom replies, "This is ridiculous." Dad replies, "We're family." Kylie replies with a screenshot of a Yelp listing for a different contractor and a laughing emoji. I reply to all of them. Great. Hire them. They don't. In November, Dad calls at 6 a.m. The smart lock system on the front door is acting up. Your mother can't get out to her appointment. I can come Wednesday at 3 p.m. Rate is $110 plus parts. Venmo first. Long silence. You're really doing this? I am. We raised you better than this. You raised me to work for free and accept scraps. I'm doing way better than that. He hangs up. They hire a contractor who charges $185 and apparently messes up the installation so bad they need a second guy to fix it. Costs them $340 total. Mom texts a photo of the bill with the caption, "This is what happens when family abandons family." I type out like 6 different responses. Settle on. That's what market rate looks like. She blocks me. Good, during that time. Evan was changing, gradually, like a plant finally getting actual sunlight after years stuck in a closet. He sleeps through the night, stops tensing up when my phone rings, stops asking, "Are we going to grandma's?" Starts asking, "Can Ben come over?" And "Can we get pizza Friday?" The answer becomes yes more often. Not because we suddenly have more money. We definitely don't. But the emotional tax is just gone. We're not constantly calculating how to keep the peace or manage other people's feelings. We're just living. We started 2 funds. One labeled emergency and one labeled Evan's college. The feed them with tips and side jobs. $5 here, 20 there. Sometimes Anna picks up alterations work from neighbors and tucks cash in. The numbers grow slow at first, then faster. Boring and sacred at the same time. I get way better at estimating jobs. At spotting scope creep. At saying that's an additional charge without flinching. One client tries the family guilt trip on me. Says her contractor nephew charges way less. I tell her to hire him. She calls back 2 days later. Pays my rate without negotiating. Word spreads. I'm the guy who shows up on time, fixes things right the first time, and doesn't lie about timelines or costs. Business picks up. Not everything's easy though. February, the truck needs transmission work. $1,240. We're sitting in the mechanic's waiting room, get the quote, and I feel that old panic rising. But Anna squeezes my hand and says, "We'll figure it out." We dip into the emergency fund, eat ramen for 2 weeks, skip the movies. Evan asks if we're poor. We're careful, I say. He thinks about it. Careful sounds smarter anyway. In March, I run into Kylie at Target. She's in the cosmetics aisle loading up her cart with makeup even though she hasn't had a booking in weeks. She sees me. Does this fake surprised face. "Oh my God, Owen! I didn't know you shopped here." "Where else would I shop?" I ask. "I just mean, never mind." She looks at my cart. Work boots, zip ties, batteries. Still doing the handyman thing? Still doing the part-time makeup thing? I ask back. Her face goes nuclear. I'm building a business. I'm building a life. One has income. She looks like she wants to throw a basket at my head. Instead, she says, "You know, Mom had a health scare last month. Nobody could reach you. Because I blocked everyone. What if it had been serious? Then I would have found out at the funeral," I say. Along with everyone else who wasn't on the approved list, she stares at me like I just grew a second head. "You've changed." "No," I say. "I just stopped pretending the cost was worth it." She walks away without her baskets. I buy my boots and head home. The texts keep coming, though, from different numbers. Different tactics every time. Testing for weak points. From Mom, "Your father's turning 65. From Dad, "We miss Evan. This isn't fair to him." From Kylie, "When are you going to stop being petty?" I respond to exactly none of them. Complete radio silence. Total blackout. Here's what they don't get. I'm not making a point. I'm not waiting for an apology. I'm just done. Not mad. Not hurt. Just done. Like a book I closed. Summer comes. We take Evan to the community pool every Saturday. $3 admission, pack our own snacks, sunscreen from the dollar store. He learns to dive off the board. Anna reads books in a lawn chair. I float on my back and think about absolutely nothing. It feels like winning. In August, Evan's school counselor calls. My stomach drops until she says, "I wanted to tell you, Evan's emotional regulation has improved dramatically. Whatever you're doing at home, it's working." I'm sitting in my truck outside a job site and I just feel relief. We barely talk to my parents. They send holiday cards, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. Each one has a passive-aggressive subtext about forgiveness and second chances, and how family should come first. We decline with one sentence each time. "Thanks, we have other plans." They send photos of matching pajamas and coordinated table settings. We wear mismatched socks and eat pizza straight from the box, and Evan falls asleep between us. One night in October, Anna asks, "Do you miss them?" I actually think about it, really think. I miss the idea of them, I say. The version I kept hoping they'd turn into. But the real them? Number. I don't miss being the help. I don't miss wondering when the next ambush is coming. A whole year rolls by. Quiet. No explosions. Just the slow accumulation of better days. Then, Evan turns 10. 2 weeks before Evan's 10th birthday, he asks the question I've been waiting for. "Can I invite my cousins to the party?" "You can invite anyone you want," I say. "They might not come." He writes their names down anyway. Right after Ben and Aiden and Paige. Draws tiny soccer balls next to each one. We plan the same setup. Same park pavilion. Plus, I rent an inflatable obstacle course from a company whose van I helped with an electrical issue when the driver's inverter died. He gives me $100 off and throws in a bubble machine. "Community karma," he says. Party day. 1 p.m. The pavilion fills up with kids and noise. I set up the obstacle course and it's an immediate hit. Kids screaming, laughing, wiping out on the inflatable walls and bouncing right back up for more. At 1:11, Kylie shows up with her kids. No mom, no dad. The kids look uncertain for like 8 seconds, then see the obstacle course and forget to be strategic. Evan hands his cousin a juice box. "You can go first if you want." The cousin smiles. "Cool. You go first. It's your birthday." 10 minutes later, I hear, "Evan's parties are actually fun," from one cousin to another. Kylie catches it, goes stiff, then snaps loud enough for nearby parents to hear, "Must be nice having endless attention." One tear, quick turn, and she speed walks to the parking lot. Mom chases her. The kids keep playing like nothing happened. It could have been this simple the whole time. But then at 1:47, Mom and Dad walk in. Late, cautious, dressed like they're going to a funeral. They stand at the edge watching the chaos like anthropologists. Mom approaches me. "Can we talk?" "Not now," I say. "We're busy." 5 minutes. "No." She blinks. "Excuse me? You're not the main character here," I say. "Evan is. Either join the party or leave. Those are your options." She looks like I just slapped her. Dad takes her arm. "Come on. Let's just enjoy the party, hun." They sit at a picnic table. Don't really interact much. Take a few photos. Leave after cake without saying goodbye. At 2:30, Kylie corners me by the cooler. Arms crossed, doing that fake concerned look. "So, this is your revenge?" she says. "Excluding family from your son's milestone?" "I didn't exclude anyone," I say. "I invited Evan's cousins. They came. You're here. That's inclusion. Mom and Dad are hurt. Mom and Dad threatened to cut off contact with my son, if I celebrated his birthday last year. They can sit with that discomfort. You're never going to let that go, are you? Why would I? They meant it. I adjusted accordingly. She tries a different angle. What do you want from us? Nothing, I say. That's the whole point. I don't want your version of family. I'm good. You're bitter. Nope, I'm free. That night my phone blows up. Messages ranging from passive-aggressive to openly hostile. I dropped a stitched screenshot to the family thread, the threats about canceling Evan's ninth, then muted it. No replies after that. You humiliated your mother. You're destroying this family. We'll never forgive you. Don't bother coming to the funeral. I read them all. Save them to weather report. Go to bed. 2 days later, Vince Caruso calls. You busy? Depends. Got a job for you. Big one. Corporate client, office building downtown, full security and automation overhaul. They're looking for a reliable contractor. I recommended you because you do good work and don't mess people over, he says. Also because I'm retiring and need someone to take over my commercial clients. The job pays $18,000. The client's a law firm, respectable, established, the kind of place that doesn't haggle on invoices. I start the following Monday, 20 months in. Here's what happened to everyone who said I'd regret walking away. Kylie's marriage completely falls apart. Turns out when you lose your free tech support and contractor, you start looking for a replacement. Kylie apparently decided that should be Colin. Started demanding he handle everything I used to do. Install smart home equipment. Fix appliances. Run Ethernet cables. Colin's a software engineer, not a contractor. Every project goes sideways. Every failure turns into a fight. She tells everyone she's focusing on her business. Meanwhile, Colin files for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and financial infidelity. Turns out Kylie's been hiding debt. A lot of debt. Credit cards maxed out for makeup supplies she never even used. A studio space she rented for 6 months that was literally just a spare bedroom in someone's house. Professional photography sessions for a portfolio that got her 0 bookings. The whole makeup artist dream was funded entirely by borrowed money and Colin's paycheck. When he gets access to the accounts during discovery, he finds $38,000 in hidden debt. The house goes up for sale. Kylie moves into a condo and immediately starts telling people she's simplifying to focus on artistry. Translation: couldn't afford the mortgage anymore. Her business dries up too. Brides talk. When your marriage implodes publicly and your own brother won't speak to you, people start wondering what you did. Nobody wants drama on their wedding day. One bride tells her bridal party coordinator, who tells her photographer, who tells a makeup artist friend, who posts in a wedding vendor Facebook group. Anyone else have issues with Kylie? She seemed really off at my trial. Very distracted. Kept checking her phone. Made comments about her ex-husband. I don't want that energy on my wedding day. 43 people see that post. In the wedding industry, that's basically a death sentence. Her bookings drop from 2 a month to 1 every 3 months. She tries to pivot to teaching makeup classes at the community center. Gets 3 students, loses 2 after the first session. I find out because she texts me at 2 a.m. on a Wednesday, clearly emotional and not thinking straight. This is your fault. You turned everyone against me. You poisoned the whole family. I reply, I didn't have to do anything. I just stopped covering for you. Mom and Dad's retirement plan completely collapses. They'd been banking on moving in with Kylie, the big house with the yard and the guest suite. When Kylie's marriage explodes and the house sells, that plan just evaporates. They try to downsize, but the market's brutal. Their house needs work I used to do for free. New buyers want things fixed. Professional quotes come in at $14,000 for basic repairs. They try to negotiate. The buyers walk. 3 more potential sales fall through for the exact same reason. They finally sell at a $30,000 loss and move into a townhouse 40 minutes away. According to my Aunt Helen, they hate it. Too small, too loud, no space for the grandkids to visit. They blame me, obviously. Dad calls in March, not to apologize, to discuss options. Your mother and I have been thinking about multi-generational living, he says. It makes financial sense. We could pool resources. Translation: can we move in with you? Our place is 2 bedrooms, I say. There's no room. You could look for something bigger. We'd contribute to rent. With what money? Silence. We're good where we are, I say. You'll figure it out. He hangs up. The extended family fractures. Most people pick sides. A surprising number pick mine. Aunt Helen says she's been watching the dynamic for years and is relieved someone finally called it out. 2 cousins reach out saying they dealt with similar situations. An uncle I barely know sends me $200 with a note that says, for Evan's college fund. The ones who pick Mom and Kylie? They stop reaching out after about 4 months when they realize I'm not coming back. Just silence. The smear campaign backfires too. Mom tries to rally the church community, paints me as the ungrateful son who abandoned his family over nothing. But she makes the mistake of doing it at a potluck where Mrs. Lee's there. The lady whose deli got broken into and whose security system I installed for free at 11 p.m. on a Saturday. Mrs. Lee was there dropping trays for her sister's church potluck. She stands up and says, "That boy has more integrity in his pinky than most people have in their whole body. Maybe ask yourself why he left." 4 other people nod. Mom leaves early. Hasn't been back to that church since. Kylie's makeup business tanks completely. Reputation matters in that world. And when your own brother won't speak to you, when your marriage explodes publicly, when brides start whispering at bridal shows, people notice. Someone sends me a screenshot of a wedding forum thread. Someone recognized Kylie's name from a vendor list and posted asking if anyone had used her. The comments are brutal. Her last few bookings cancel. Word spreads that she's difficult, unreliable, expensive for what you get. The phone stops ringing. Evan thrives. Turns 11. Then 12. Taller than Anna now. Honor roll. Travel soccer team. Friends who come over and trash our place, and I love every second of it. We save enough for a real vacation. Drive to the coast. Evan stands in the surf up to his knees and says, "Dad, this is the best day of my life." Anna takes a photo of him and me standing in the water. Sun setting behind us. Both of us grinning like idiots. That photo lives on our fridge now, right next to his honor roll certificate and the birthday countdown calendar. I'm not the supportive son who did free labor anymore. I'm the guy who walked away and built something better. I became the disappointment son, which is good for me. At least I am happy and having peace of mind. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Not a single member of my family showed up to my wedding, not my parents, not even my best friend. They all chose my sister's engagement party instead. As we cut the cake, my phone lit up with a message from my mom. "We need to talk, now," followed by 43 missed calls. Title pretty much says it all, but buckle up because this story has everything. Family betrayal, gold digging gone catastrophically wrong, and revenge so perfectly executed it should be taught in business schools. This is a long one, but I promise every single word is worth reading. Grab some popcorn. Quick background about me since context absolutely matters for understanding what comes next. I'm Alex, 32 now, but this nuclear explosion happened when I was 29. I'm a construction project manager who clawed my way up from absolutely nothing through pure determination and backbreaking work. Grew up in a solidly middle-class household where my parents constantly preached about working hard and earning everything you get through honest effort. Went to trade school instead of college. Started as a basic laborer making minimum wage. Worked my way through every single position imaginable. Electrical work, plumbing, general contracting, site supervision, quality control. My sister Jessica is 2 years younger and has literally never worked a legitimate day in her entire privileged life. She figured out early that being conventionally attractive and knowing exactly how to manipulate people emotionally gets you much further than actual effort, talent, or developing any real skills. Been bouncing between wealthy boyfriends since high school, always hunting relentlessly for the next financial upgrade and bigger bank account. My parents absolutely loved this pattern because she consistently brought home guys with impressive salaries and prestigious job titles that made them look good socially. I've been with my wife Sarah since we met in a community college evening class 7 years ago. She's a registered nurse who genuinely cares about helping people and works incredibly hard for everything she has earned. We both sacrificed and struggled for years to build what we have today through careful planning and discipline. No handouts, no trust funds, no wealthy relatives writing checks. Just pure determination, honest work, and smart financial decisions. This is the detailed story of how my entire family chose my sister's superficial nonsense over my wedding day, and exactly how I made them regret that decision in ways they never imagined possible. 2 years ago, I was deep in planning my wedding to Sarah. We'd been engaged for 8 months and managed to save up $18,000 for a really nice ceremony through careful budgeting and working extra hours. Nothing extravagant or over the top, but we wanted our special day to be memorable and meaningful for everyone involved. We sent detailed save the dates back in January for our September 15th wedding date. Jessica had been dating this investment banker named Tyler for roughly 6 months at this point. This guy represented everything my parents had ever fantasized about their daughter bringing home. MBA from some prestigious university, drives an expensive BMW that cost more than most people's annual salary, works at a major financial firm downtown, pulling in well over $200,000 annually, plus substantial bonuses. Jessica was already posting these incredibly cringeworthy Instagram photos of them at fancy restaurants with captions like, "When he treats you like the queen you deserve to be," accompanied by crown and diamond emojis and hashtags about living her best life. Here's what you absolutely need to understand about Jessica's position in our family dynamics. She's always been the undisputed golden child, but not in any subtle or understated way. Complete princess treatment from the moment she was born, until now. When I graduated from trade school with honors and landed my first real project management position, my parents said, "That's nice, honey," and immediately changed the subject to something else. When Jessica graduated with her communications degree after changing majors 3 times, they threw an elaborate graduation party and spent months bragging to everyone they knew about their incredibly accomplished daughter. She's also completely lacking in genuine intelligence, but somehow convinced herself she's a master manipulator playing everyone around her like puppets. The type of person who genuinely believes she's playing sophisticated mental chess when she's really just moving checkers around the board without any coherent strategy whatsoever. In July, exactly 2 months before my carefully planned wedding, Jessica announces with great fanfare that Tyler proposed to her during some elaborate rooftop dinner that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Absolutely shocking development, right? But here's where this situation becomes completely insane, and my blood pressure starts rising. She immediately starts planning this massive, over-the-top engagement party and deliberately picks September 15th for the date, the exact same day as my wedding that had been planned, announced, and saved for over 8 months. When I confronted her directly about this obvious and deliberate conflict, she just casually shrugged her shoulders and said, "Oh, I didn't even realize there was a problem with that date." But Tyler's parents are flying in from the West Coast, and it's literally the only weekend that works for everyone who actually matters in our lives. Everyone who actually matters. Just let that phrase sink in completely and think about what she was really saying. My mom immediately started with her typical, "Can't you guys somehow work this out between yourselves" routine. Like I should seriously consider rescheduling my wedding that we'd been meticulously planning and saving for just because Princess Jessica suddenly needed that specific date for her engagement party. "It's just an engagement party," I explained to them as patiently as possible. "Those can happen literally any time throughout the year. Weddings are supposed to be once-in-a-lifetime events that families plan around." Jessica actually rolled her eyes at me like I was being completely unreasonable and dramatic. "Alex, you're being way too emotional about this. It's not just some random party we're throwing together. Tyler's father is a senior partner at his firm, and all their most important clients will be attending this event. This could be absolutely huge for Tyler's career advancement and our future together. Your wedding is just family members and some friends from school. Just family members and friends from school." My wedding was dismissed as just that in her selfish mind. The absolutely worst part of this entire situation? My parents immediately started nodding along enthusiastically, like she was making perfect logical sense instead of being completely selfish. 6 weeks before my wedding date, I started receiving these strange, evasive responses from various family members instead of the enthusiastic confirmations I'd expected. Instead of simply confirming their attendance like normal people do for family weddings, everyone kept saying vague things like, "We'll see how, everything develops," or "We're still trying to figure out our schedule situation," which made absolutely no sense. My best man Jake, who I've known since we were in middle school together and considered my closest friend, calls me up one evening and says he needs to discuss something really important with me. His tone was weird and uncomfortable. Turns out Jessica had been continuously texting him behind my back for weeks, trying to convince him that I was being completely unreasonable and selfish about the date conflict situation, and that as my closest friend, he should help persuade me to be more flexible and understanding about the whole thing. She literally attempted to turn my own best man against me during my wedding planning process. The absolute breaking point came when my dad called me directly one evening and said, "Look, son, your sister's engagement party is genuinely important for her future prospects and financial security. Maybe you and Sarah could consider moving your wedding back a few months. You're both already established and stable in your careers." I completely lost my composure and started raising my voice. "Dad, are you actually seriously asking me to postpone my wedding so Jessica can have her engagement party on the same day? It's not just some random party, Alex. This is fundamentally about Jessica's future financial security and social standing. Tyler comes from an excellent family with business connections that could set them up for life financially. What about my life, Dad? What about my future and what matters to me and Sarah?" There was this really long, uncomfortable pause where I could hear him thinking, "You're already doing well for yourself, son. You have your career established. You're financially stable and independent. Jessica needs this opportunity much more than you need some big wedding ceremony." That was the exact moment I realized I was completely and utterly screwed in this family dynamic. In their twisted minds, my sister's shameless social climbing was infinitely more valuable and important than my marriage to the woman I loved. 3 weeks before my wedding date, all the RSVP responses came back in the mail. My parents, Jessica, both sets of grandparents, my uncles and aunts, basically every single member of my extended family, had formally declined my wedding invitation with polite excuses. They were all planning to attend Jessica's engagement party instead of my wedding. Even Jake, my supposed best man and closest friend since childhood, called me just 2 days before the wedding to completely bail on me at the last minute. "I'm really sorry, man, but Jessica makes some valid points about this situation. This could be genuinely important for their future together financially, and your wedding will still be meaningful and special with Sarah's family there to support you." I wanted to reach through the phone and physically shake him until his teeth rattled loose. My wedding day ended up being simultaneously the absolute best and worst day of my entire life up to that point. Sarah looked completely stunning and radiant in her dress. Her family was incredibly welcoming and supportive throughout the entire process, and our real friends who actually showed up made it feel genuinely special and memorable despite everything. But there was this massive, gaping, empty section where my supposedly loving family should have been sitting and celebrating with us during this important milestone. Sarah's father even graciously offered to walk me down the aisle, since my own father had chosen an engagement party over his son's wedding day. When he whispered, "I'm truly honored to call you my son," right before we reached the altar, I almost completely broke down emotionally in front of everyone. During the reception celebration afterward, I kept obsessively checking my phone like some kind of emotional masochist who couldn't stop picking at a wound. Jessica had been posting continuous Instagram stories throughout the entire evening from her party. Elaborate ice sculptures, gourmet catering setups, live musical entertainment, professional photography, the absolute works. She even posted a video of Tyler giving this heartfelt speech about how incredibly blessed and grateful he was to be joining such a wonderful, loving family. My family. The exact same family that couldn't be bothered to attend their son's wedding because they had something better to do. 3 months after my wedding, my grandfather on my mother's side unexpectedly passed away in his sleep. He was 89 years old and had been steadily declining for several months, so the death itself wasn't particularly surprising to anyone. What absolutely shocked everyone and caused major family drama was what happened at the official will reading ceremony. It turned out my grandfather had been paying much closer attention to our family dynamics than anyone had ever realized or given him credit for. He left me his entire house, a gorgeous 4-bedroom craftsman-style home in one of the most desirable neighborhoods in town, professionally appraised at $485,000. He also left me his completely restored vintage car collection consisting of 3 classic Mustangs he'd personally worked on for decades in his garage, plus an $85,000 life insurance policy that I had no idea existed. To Jessica, he left his personal book collection and a $2,500 government savings bond that had been sitting untouched for years. The family attorney read this information out loud with our entire family present in the room, and I watched Jessica's facial expression transform from smug confidence to complete shock to absolute rage in a matter of seconds. Her mouth literally fell open. "That's completely impossible," she declared loudly. "Grandpa always specifically told me I was his favorite granddaughter and that he was saving something special for me." The attorney simply looked down at his official papers without emotion. Mr. Patterson was extremely clear and specific about his final wishes. He actually revised this entire will quite recently before his passing. Later, I discovered through my cousin Amy that my grandfather had updated everything exactly 2 weeks after my wedding took place. The wise old man had been carefully keeping score of who showed up when it truly mattered most to the people they claimed to love. My parents were absolutely livid about this development and kept muttering about unfairness, but there wasn't a single thing they could legally do about it, since everything was properly documented. So suddenly, there I was at 30 years old, married to an absolutely amazing woman who supported my dreams, living in a $485,000 house I owned completely free and clear, with 3 valuable classic cars and substantial cash in the bank. But instead of just passively sitting on this unexpected inheritance, like some people might do, I made the strategic decision to use it as a solid foundation for building something much bigger and more substantial for our future. My first major move was selling one of the Mustangs for $38,000 to a collector who'd been admiring it for years, and using that money plus the life insurance payout to make down payments on two well-positioned rental properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods. The real estate market in our area was just starting to heat up significantly, and I managed to get in at exactly the right time before prices exploded. At my regular job, I was already performing well as a project manager and had earned respect from my colleagues. But now I had the confidence and financial cushion necessary to take much bigger professional risks. I started my own construction consulting business during weekends and evenings, specializing in project management services for large-scale commercial renovations and new construction projects. Having a completely paid-off house meant I could take on projects with longer payment schedules and significantly undercut the pricing of more established firms while still maintaining healthy profit margins. Within exactly 18 months of starting my side business, it was generating more income than my regular day job at the construction company. I quit the company on good terms and transitioned to working full-time with my own operation. By the end of year 2, I was clearing approximately $195,000 annually and owned 4 different rental properties that were generating steady passive income every single month without requiring much hands-on management. Sarah and I were genuinely living our absolute dream life together. We traveled extensively to places we'd only read about before, hosted elaborate dinner parties at our beautiful house for friends and colleagues, and started having serious conversations about starting a family in the near future. Meanwhile, my biological family had essentially written me off completely as the ungrateful son who had simply gotten lucky with an inheritance he didn't deserve and probably wouldn't manage properly. What they had absolutely no idea about was that I was meticulously documenting and recording everything that happened involving our family dynamics. Every snide comment made about me behind my back, every family gathering I wasn't invited to participate in, every social media post where Jessica bragged extensively about her luxurious lifestyle while taking subtle but pointed shots at my character and life choices. Because Jessica's engagement to Tyler was starting to show some very serious structural cracks that were getting harder and harder to hide from public view. You see, Tyler had initially assumed he was getting a low-maintenance trophy wife who would be grateful for his financial support and wouldn't make excessive demands. But Jessica is high maintenance to an absolutely extreme degree that borders on delusional. She immediately quit her part-time administrative job, not that she had ever really been working seriously anyway, and expected him to completely fund her entire lifestyle without question or complaint. We're talking about $600 dinners multiple times every single week, shopping sprees that cost more than most people's monthly rent payments, an $85,000 luxury Mercedes SUV for her birthday present that she insisted was practical. Tyler was certainly making decent money in his investment banking position, but Jessica was systematically burning through it much faster than he could possibly earn it, even with his substantial bonuses. And unlike the trust fund babies she had typically dated in the past, Tyler actually had to work extremely hard for every single dollar he earned and understood the value of money. My cousin Amy, who was literally the only family member who still maintained regular contact with me after the wedding fiasco, would periodically give me detailed updates on how Jessica was systematically draining Tyler's savings account and how my parents were getting increasingly worried that their golden goose might be getting tired of being constantly plucked clean. Chapter 5. Cracks in the Perfect Foundation. By the time I turned 31, my business was absolutely crushing every performance metric imaginable and exceeding my wildest expectations. I'd successfully expanded operations into 3 different regional markets, employed 12 full-time people who I treated well and paid competitive salaries, and was solidly on track to clear $320,000 that year before taxes. Sarah and I purchased a beautiful lake house with cash as our weekend retreat, and were having increasingly serious discussions about starting our family within the next year. Meanwhile, Jessica's supposedly perfect fairy tale life was systematically falling apart, and she was far too clueless and self-absorbed to see the disaster approaching like a freight train. Tyler had started working significantly longer hours and traveling much more frequently for business purposes, which Jessica interpreted as him being incredibly dedicated to securing their financial future together. In actual reality, Amy informed me during our monthly coffee meetings, he was desperately avoiding going home because Jessica had become completely insufferable to live with on a daily basis and would constantly badger him about money. She'd transformed into one of those absolute nightmare fiancés who genuinely believe that wedding planning means spending unlimited amounts of someone else's money without any constraints, limitations, or consideration for financial reality whatsoever. The venue she had decided she absolutely needed for their perfect day cost $55,000 just for the basic space rental fee, not including catering decorations or any other services. Her dream wedding dress carried a $9,500 price tag from some designer boutique. She wanted an elaborate 3-week honeymoon in Europe that would cost approximately $28,000, including first-class flights, luxury hotels, and fine dining experiences. Tyler's parents, who had initially been completely charmed by Jessica's carefully crafted performance during their first meetings, were starting to see through the superficial act she'd been maintaining. At family dinner gatherings, she'd make passive-aggressive comments about how certain people didn't properly understand the importance of investing in relationships and maintaining appropriate social appearances and standing in the community. The breaking point came during Christmas dinner at my parents' house, which I wasn't invited to attend, naturally, since I was now persona non grata. Amy secretly recorded portions of the conversation on her phone and sent me the footage later that evening, knowing I'd want to see what I was missing. Jessica was prominently showing off her engagement ring, 4.5 carats, $45,000 according to her constant bragging on social media, and enthusiastically discussing elaborate wedding plans in excruciating detail when Tyler's mother asked what seemed like an innocent question. What kind of work does Jessica do professionally these days? Complete and total silence filled the dining room. You could hear a pin drop. Then, Jessica laughed dismissively and said, "Oh, I'm currently between career opportunities right now while I focus on our relationship. Tyler and I mutually decided it would be much better for me to focus entirely on planning our life together rather than getting distracted by some meaningless job." Tyler's facial expression in that video was absolutely priceless and worth watching multiple times. You could literally see the exact moment he realized his fiancée had just openly admitted to being a professional gold digger directly in front of his parents and extended family. That was precisely when I knew it was the perfect time to execute the plan I'd been carefully developing over the past several months. Jessica's wedding was officially scheduled for June 12th, exactly 2 years after my own modest celebration. Unlike my carefully budgeted ceremony that focused on meaning over materialism, this was going to be a $130,000 spectacular extravaganza, funded entirely by Tyler and his increasingly concerned family members who were starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Through my expanding business network and professional associations, I'd connected with a forensic accountant who specialized in conducting financial investigations for family law cases and divorce proceedings. We developed a genuine friendship through a professional association, and during one of our regular conversations over coffee, I casually mentioned my sister's increasingly problematic financial situation. "Your sister sounds like a real piece of work," he observed thoughtfully, after I described her spending patterns. Exactly the type of woman who would systematically drain someone's accounts and disappear if she thought she could get away with it without consequences. That particular conversation sparked an idea that would ultimately change everything for everyone involved in this family drama. I began systematically documenting Jessica's spending patterns using her own proudly posted social media content as evidence. Every expensive dinner she bragged about attending, every elaborate shopping trip she documented with photos, every luxury vacation she photographed and posted online with detailed captions. I created an incredibly detailed spreadsheet tracking her lifestyle costs based entirely on her own evidence and constant bragging about her lavish lifestyle. The numbers were absolutely staggering when compiled together and analyzed objectively. In the 20 months since her engagement began, Jessica had been consistently living a lifestyle that cost approximately $9,200 per month, every single penny funded by Tyler's income and savings, with no contribution from her whatsoever. But here's what made my plan absolutely perfect and virtually foolproof. I'd also been carefully tracking Tyler's career progression through various industry connections and professional contacts in the financial sector. His firm had been struggling significantly with major market changes and regulatory pressures, and there were increasingly serious rumors about substantial layoffs coming soon to cut costs. The big promotion Jessica kept bragging about constantly to justify her excessive spending? It was never going to happen according to my sources. 2 months before the wedding date, I started making carefully calculated strategic moves that would set everything in motion. First, I contacted Tyler's father through legitimate business channels and professional networking. I introduced myself as a fellow professional and mentioned I was genuinely concerned about some troubling industry rumors regarding Tyler's firm's overall financial stability and future prospects in the current market. "Oh, you've heard about the serious troubles at Meridian Capital too?" He responded immediately with obvious concern. "We're getting increasingly worried ourselves about Tyler's situation. He's been extremely secretive about work situations lately, and some things Jessica's been saying definitely don't match what we're hearing from other reliable industry contacts." I planted just enough legitimate concern to get him asking all the right questions without seeming suspicious. Second, I reached out to a guy I knew who worked directly at Tyler's company in a different department. Without ever mentioning my personal connection to Jessica, I asked general questions about the firm's stability since I was supposedly considering some potential business partnerships with them. Honestly, I'd strongly recommend staying far away from any deals with them, he warned me seriously. We've had 3 major layoff rounds in the past year alone. The partners are hemorrhaging money rapidly, and Tyler's been on extremely thin ice for months. Word around the office is he'll probably be gone by summer. Everything was falling into place absolutely perfectly, according to my plan. 3 weeks before Jessica's elaborate wedding that she'd been planning obsessively for months, the perfect storm finally hit with devastating force that would change everything. Tyler got laid off completely from his investment banking position. Not just fired for performance issues, his entire division was eliminated as part of massive company restructuring and downsizing to cut costs. His $210,000 annual salary vanished overnight, along with his substantial bonus structure and valuable stock options that Jessica had been counting on. But Jessica had absolutely no idea this catastrophic event had happened, because Tyler was too embarrassed and terrified to tell her the truth about their financial situation. He'd been desperately putting wedding expenses on multiple credit cards for months, frantically hoping to land another comparable position before anyone discovered his real financial situation and the house of cards collapsed. This was my perfect moment to strike decisively and execute the plan I'd been developing. I created a completely anonymous email account and sent Tyler's father a comprehensive analysis of Jessica's documented spending over the past 2 years. I included detailed screenshots of her social media posts, constantly bragging about expensive purchases, luxury restaurant visits, designer shopping sprees, and elaborate vacation trips. The report clearly demonstrated that Jessica had been systematically burning through approximately $165,000 annually of Tyler's money on pure lifestyle expenses and status symbols with no regard for their actual financial situation. I included a carefully worded note saying I was a concerned business associate who thought the family should be fully aware of the financial situation before making any major commitments or investments. Tyler's father immediately forwarded this detailed information to Tyler with an urgent message saying they needed to have an emergency family meeting about Jessica's spending patterns and their growing concerns about the upcoming marriage and financial obligations. Meanwhile, Amy informed me that Tyler's mother had been conducting her own investigation and discovered that Jessica had been actively telling people Tyler was being promoted to partner, completely false, and that they were seriously looking at houses in the $900,000 range, absolutely impossible, given their actual financial situation. The final confrontation happened at what was supposed to be their last wedding planning meeting with vendors. Tyler showed up with both parents and presented Jessica with printed bank statements, clearly showing he'd accumulated $52,000 in credit card debt funding her lifestyle demands. His father presented the comprehensive spending analysis I'd provided them. "Jessica," Tyler said, his voice shaking with emotion and stress, "we need to postpone the wedding indefinitely until we can figure out our financial situation and get back on stable ground." According to Amy, who heard every single detail from my mother afterward, Jessica completely and utterly lost her mind in spectacular fashion. She started screaming about how they absolutely couldn't postpone because everything was already arranged and paid for, with money Tyler didn't actually have. She accused Tyler's parents of being jealous of her success and happiness and said they were deliberately trying to sabotage the wedding because they never thought she was good enough for their precious son. Then Tyler dropped the nuclear bomb that destroyed everything. "Jessica, I lost my job a month ago. We can't afford this wedding. We can't afford your lifestyle. We can't afford anything you've been planning." Jessica's response was pure gold and showed her true character. "Well, then get another job immediately. This is my special day, and I'm absolutely not canceling it because you can't handle your career responsibilities." Tyler walked out immediately. His parents walked out behind him. The wedding planner gathered her materials and left without another word. Just like that, the $130,000 wedding that was supposed to happen in 3 weeks was completely destroyed and over. The aftermath was absolutely beautiful to watch unfold from my safe distance as an outside observer. Jessica had to move back in with my parents because Tyler immediately kicked her out of his apartment and changed the locks. The wedding venue kept the entire $18,000 deposit according to their contract terms. The caterer kept another $9,500 for food that would never be served. Jessica was stuck with a $9,500 wedding dress she'd never wear and approximately $35,000 worth of other deposits and payments that were completely non-refundable according to the contract she'd signed. But the story gets so much better from there, and I was just getting started with my revenge. Within 1 week of the wedding cancellation, Tyler's parents sent Jessica an official legal demand letter for $78,000, representing everything they had invested in the wedding that was now completely lost due to her unreasonable financial expectations and irresponsible behavior. They had receipts for everything. Jessica had exactly $0 to pay this substantial debt because she'd never actually held a legitimate job in her entire adult life and had no savings whatsoever. She tried desperately to get Tyler back with tearful phone calls and apologies, but he'd already started dating a coworker who was a certified financial planner with her own apartment and a fully funded retirement account. My parents, who had enabled Jessica's entitled behavior for years without consequences, suddenly found themselves supporting a 29-year-old daughter with no job, no savings, no boyfriend, and lifestyle expectations they couldn't possibly afford to maintain on their retirement income. That's when the increasingly desperate phone calls to me started coming in regularly, multiple times per day. First, my mom with her guilt-tripping voice. "Alex, I know things have been strained between us lately, but Jessica is really struggling right now and needs family support. Maybe you could help her find a position with one of your business contacts? You know so many successful people now." Straight to voicemail without hesitation. I didn't even listen to the full message. Then my dad, with his authoritative tone, "Son, I know we haven't always agreed on everything, but family is family and we stick together. Jessica made some errors in judgment, but she's learned from this experience. Maybe you could loan her some money to get stabilized and back on her feet?" Voicemail again. I was enjoying the silence. Finally, Jessica herself, calling while crying hysterically. "Alex, I know I made terrible mistakes and hurt you badly. I know I wasn't supportive during your wedding situation, and I'm truly sorry for everything. But I'm your sister, and I desperately need help. Tyler's parents are threatening legal action, and I don't know what to do. Can you please help me get through this difficult time?" This particular call I actually decided to answer, because I wanted to hear her beg. "Hey, Jessica. Oh, thank goodness, Alex. I've been so worried you wouldn't speak to me anymore. Look, I know the wedding date thing got complicated and feelings were hurt, but that's all in the past now. I really need—" "Stop talking immediately." "What? I don't understand." I said stop. Here's exactly what's going to happen. You're going to get a job. A real job where you actually work for money and earn a paycheck. You're going to pay back Tyler's parents every single dollar you owe them. And you're going to accomplish all of this without any assistance from me whatsoever. But Alex, I don't understand why you're being so harsh. We're family. Grandpa left you all that money. You have your successful business. You could easily— Let me stop you right there. Grandpa left me that inheritance because I showed up for his funeral while you were shopping. You know where you were that day? Using Tyler's credit card at the mall. He left me that money because he recognized I'd actually built something meaningful with my life through hard work. That's not fair. I didn't know Grandpa was keeping track of who— Of course you didn't know. You never pay attention to anything that doesn't directly benefit you personally. Just like you didn't pay attention when you deliberately scheduled your engagement party on my wedding day after I'd announced the date months earlier. Long, uncomfortable silence where I could hear her breathing. "Look," she said, switching to that manipulative tone she'd perfected since childhood. "I know I made some mistakes in the past, but I'm your baby sister. Don't you want me to be happy and successful? You mean don't I want you to be comfortable without earning it? No, Jessica. I genuinely don't want that for you anymore. Please, Alex. I'm literally begging you and swallowing my pride. I'll do anything you ask of me. Here's what you can do. Get a job at a retail store or restaurant or anywhere that will hire someone with no real work experience and no useful skills. Move into a small apartment that you pay for with your own earnings. And maybe in a few years, after you've proven you can function as a responsible adult, we can discuss having a relationship again. But what am I supposed to tell people? All my friends are going to know about Tyler's parents suing me. This is completely humiliating and embarrassing. Welcome to consequences, Jessica. I hear they're quite educational when you finally experience them. I hung up and felt better than I had in years. That conversation happened 10 months ago. Here's where everyone ended up in this story. Jessica eventually found work at a department store in the mall, making $13 per hour folding clothes. She moved into a tiny one-bedroom apartment with a roommate and drives a 2010 Honda Civic she bought from a used car lot. Her Instagram went from luxury lifestyle bragging to generic inspirational quotes that nobody believes or engages with. She's been on exactly 4 dates in 10 months, all with guys who definitely cannot and will not fund the lifestyle she used to demand. Most of her old friends stopped associating with her once the money dried up and she couldn't afford to go out anymore. Tyler landed a position at a smaller firm making about $140,000 and got engaged to the financial planner. They're planning a modest wedding that they're paying for entirely themselves without any family drama. My parents have started reaching out to me again, but only because they need advice about their retirement planning, and they've realized I actually know something about managing money successfully. Funny how that works when they need something. Jake, my former best man, sent me a long, apologetic text last month saying he didn't understand the full situation and asking if we could meet up to talk things through. I never responded and deleted his number. Sarah and I just purchased a second vacation property in Costa Rica and are planning to start trying for our first child next year. My business is projected to clear $425,000 this year, and I'm considering expanding into 2 additional markets. I never gave Jessica a single penny throughout her entire ordeal. Not when Tyler's parents sued her and she had to settle for $40,000 paid over 5 years. Not when she got evicted from her first apartment for missing rent payments. Not when she crashed her car and needed money for repairs and insurance. Every time my parents suggest I should help family during difficult times, I remind them that family is supposed to show up for weddings and important life events. The absolute best part happened last month when Sarah and I attended our friend Mike's wedding at a beautiful venue downtown. Guess who was working as part of the catering staff serving guests? Jessica didn't notice me, but I saw her clearly throughout the evening. Hair pulled back in a regulation ponytail, wearing a black uniform polo shirt and slacks, carrying trays of appetizers to guests celebrating someone else's perfect day while getting paid minimum wage plus tips. Life has an incredible sense of justice and irony sometimes. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't destroying someone's life yourself. Sometimes it's just stepping back and letting them destroy their own life while you build something incredible and watch from a distance. Today's story is about a guy who spent 4 years being his family's free nanny, emergency driver, and on-call errand boy, while his golden child brother collected Porsches and their mom typed, "He doesn't have a real life anyway," into the family group chat. And here's the part that matters. He could read every single word of it. The guy wasn't soft by nature. He was an EMT. He spent his weeks pulling strangers out of wrecked cars. His family just figured that because he was built for crises, he'd always absorb theirs. One Christmas, he stopped absorbing. What happened on that family Zoom call is the kind of thing that gets talked about for years. Buckle up. My mom was planning to make me watch my golden child brother's 5 kids over Christmas. So on Christmas Eve, I boarded a plane. What my aunt read out loud on the family video call made every single person gasp. What? This can't be happening. I'm Nick, 28, and I work as an EMT. Not a glamorous job, not a high-paying one, but it's the kind of work where you show up when things are already on fire and you try to make sure people don't die. I'm good at it. My family unfortunately noticed that and then built their entire holiday infrastructure around it. My older brother Kevin is 33 and holds some VP title at a corporate firm. I couldn't tell you what he actually does all day. I'm not sure he could either. What I do know is it pays extremely well, requires very little visible effort, and apparently involves a lot of golf and very expensive weekend brunch. He and his wife Tina have 5 kids under 8. Lily, Ethan, Noah, and twins Mason and Harper. Great kids individually. As a unit, they are a natural disaster. And somewhere along the way, they became my permanent responsibility. My mom, Linda, is the kind of woman who spends 3 days before Thanksgiving staging the house like a magazine shoot. Fresh flowers, matching dishes, a centerpiece she ordered online 6 weeks in advance. She's been running the Golden Child operation since before I was old enough to understand what was happening. Kevin gets the praise, Kevin gets the support, Kevin gets the benefit of every doubt, and I get to be useful. That's always been the deal, even if nobody ever said it out loud. My dad, Robert, is a genuinely good man who mastered the art of conflict avoidance sometime in my childhood and hadn't looked back since. He keeps his head down and lets the chaos wash over him. Good guy, genuinely useless when it counted. Thanksgiving this year looked exactly like every other one on the surface. I was in my usual spot at the table, closest to the kitchen. That's how you figure out where you rank. The kitchen-adjacent seat belongs to whoever's going to jump up for the extra napkins, the dropped forks, the spilled gravy. Human infrastructure. Meanwhile, the kids were going absolutely feral. I don't know if you've ever sat in a room with 5 children under 8 at a holiday table, but it feels less like a family meal and more like being trapped inside a jet engine someone decided to decorate with a cornucopia. Halfway through the meal, my mom stood up, tapped her water glass with a butter knife, and hit the room with that smile. You know the one. All performance, zero warmth, the kind of smile a politician wears right before they announce a tax hike. She looked directly at me and told the table she had a plan for Christmas. Kevin and Tina had been talking about a couple's resort in the mountains. They worked hard. They deserved a break. They had 5 beautiful children, and they needed some real rest. And I would be staying at the house to watch those kids, just like always. She didn't ask. She never asks. It's always stated as established fact, like I'd already agreed and was just the last to be informed. Before I could process a single syllable of the audacity, Tina reached into her designer bag and slid a laminated sheet across the polished oak table. It stopped right next to my dinner plate. Color-coded, feeding schedules, allergy charts, nebulizer times for Ethan at exactly 8 p.m. A note that the twins were going through a biting phase, and I should watch my ankles. She had color-coded my unpaid labor and laminated it. My jaw clenched so tight I could feel it in my back teeth. I looked around the table. Kevin was cutting his turkey, completely at ease. My dad was suddenly extremely interested in his dinner roll. Nobody flinched. Nobody saw a single problem here. I said, actually, I can't do that. I have plans this Christmas. Every fork paused in midair. Kevin looked up with the annoyed expression of someone whose favorite sports team just got insulted. My mom let out this sharp, dismissive laugh that hit somewhere behind my ribs. Plans, she said. What plans, Nicholas? Please. You don't have a family of your own anyway, so it works out perfectly. You don't have a family of your own. I was 28 years old. I worked 60-hour weeks. I had held the hands of people taking their last breaths in the back of my rig, talked them through moments no family member had made it to in time. I'd spent my 20s building a life out of blood, exhaustion, and the kind of stress most people would tap out of inside a week. But because I didn't have a wife and a mortgage, my time was essentially worthless. My existence only counted in proportion to how much of it I could donate to Kevin. Then Kevin reached into his jacket pocket and dropped something on the table next to the gravy boat with a heavy metallic clank. Car keys, leather keychain, Porsche Crest. Just picked up the Macan yesterday, he said, leaning back. Twin turbo. It's a beast. My mom actually clapped her hands together like he'd just announced an engagement. We were so happy to help out. I looked at my dad. He looked away. My parents, who for years told me they couldn't help with my community college loans due to tight finances, who complained about grocery prices on a monthly basis, had just handed Kevin a down payment for a luxury SUV. While in the same breath demanding I sacrifice my 1 week of vacation a year to change his kids' diapers for free. I didn't flip the table. I folded my napkin, set it next to my plate, stood up quietly, and said I was heading out. My mom informed me we hadn't had pie. I told her I was full. I walked out into the freezing November night. My 10-year-old Civic sat in the driveway. I sat in the dark waiting for the heater to kick in and pulled out my phone. There was my email confirmation. 2 tickets to the Outer Banks, departing December 23rd. Me and my coworker Mark had been planning this trip since July. An oceanfront cabin, no sirens, no pagers, no laminated schedules. I'd been building toward it for 6 months, eating instant noodles instead of takeout, skipping Friday nights with the guys from the station, tracking every dollar in a small blue notebook. $2,340. Every cent of it earned on 4 a.m. alarms and 14-hour shifts. I stared at that confirmation for a long time. I was not canceling it. Here's the thing about how a family gets to a place like this. It doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It's a slow erosion, year by year, until one day, the thing that's been taken from you is so large you can barely see around it. 4 years of Christmas history in my case. The first year, my mom asked if I could watch the kids for just a few hours so Kevin and Tina could sleep in. Just a few hours, honey. I agreed. A few hours turned into 14. They left at 9 a.m. and came back at 11 p.m. Movie, long lunch, shopping. I spent the whole day breaking up fights, mopping juice off the carpet, and rocking a screaming kid through a nap while my mom watched TV in the other room telling me I was building character. Year 2, they dropped even the pretense. They just assumed, because the year before I'd gone along with it. Do it once and apparently you've signed a permanent contract. Then last Christmas, the actual breaking point. Kevin and Tina dropped all 5 kids at my mom's house on December 23rd and drove 3 hours away to Tina's parents. My mom conveniently developed severe, debilitating back pain that same afternoon and locked herself in her bedroom. I was left entirely alone with a preschooler, a toddler, and 3 infants in a house that was not mine on Christmas Eve. At 10 p.m., baby Noah spiked a fever of 103. He was burning up, thrashing, making this horrible raw sound that no parent should ever have to hear and no EMT ever forgets. Panicked. I called Kevin. Voicemail. Called Tina. Voicemail. Knocked on my mom's bedroom door. She yelled through the wood to just give him Tylenol. Nicholas, I'm trying to sleep. I'm a trained medical professional. I know exactly what a 103 fever in an infant means, and it is not, give him Tylenol and put on a movie. I bundled all 5 kids into my car in the freezing snow and drove carefully but fast to the nearest urgent care. Sat in a fluorescent waiting room for 4 straight hours on Christmas Eve, holding a burning baby, while the other 4 dismantled the magazine display, and a kid in the corner kept asking me if Santa knew about the bad kids. Severe double ear infection. Since I wasn't Noah's legal guardian, and Kevin had naturally forgotten to leave the insurance cards, I paid out of pocket. $180. Not a small number on my salary. When Kevin and Tina strolled into the house on December 26th, looking tanned and well-rested, I handed Kevin the receipt. He barely glanced at it, picked it up, stuffed it in his pocket, and told me I shouldn't have panicked because kids get fevers all the time. Anyway, thanks for stepping up. He never paid it back. Not a dollar, not a mention. What Tina did do was hand me a wrapped gift on the way out. I opened it that night in my kitchen. Vanilla-scented candle. Clearance sticker still stuck to the bottom. $12. That was my compensation for 3 days of free labor, a medical emergency, and $180 of my own money. A discounted candle someone grabbed on the way out of a boutique, with the sticker still on it. Hold on. For anyone listening, this is me, the host, jumping in for a second. Because I need to address the candle before we go any further. Kevin is 33, a VP. His parents just handed him a down payment for a Porsche, and his official acknowledgement of his brother running a Christmas Eve emergency medical operation is a $12 clearance candle with the sticker still on the bottom. He didn't peel the sticker. He looked at this candle, saw the sticker, and went, "Yeah, that's fine." That's not a thank you gift. That's Kevin communicating, in physical, flammable form, exactly how much he respects the person holding it. He could have bought a real candle. He didn't peel the sticker. Okay, keep going. A few weeks into December, I was in the break room at the station warming up leftover chili after a brutal double shift. Wednesday, I think. Wait, no, Tuesday. Whatever, doesn't matter. My phone rang. Aunt Pauline, my mom's younger sister. Retired school teacher, sharp as anyone I've met. The kind of woman who sits quietly in the corner at family events and sees everything without saying a word until she decides it matters. A random weeknight call from her was unusual enough that I stepped outside into the cold ambulance bay to take it. She got straight to it. She told me she'd been reading the family group chat, Mercer Family Updates, for 3 years on silent, reading everything. She said watching what my mom and Kevin posted in there made her sick. She told me to go on my trip. Don't let them guilt me into canceling. Don't let them manipulate me into staying. And then she said, read the chat history. Read what they say about you when they think no one's paying attention. She'd been taking screenshots. She hung up before I could say anything else. I stood in the cold air for a minute. Then I pulled up the group chat. I kept it muted year-round because it was mostly Tina posting photos of the kids' organic lunches or Kevin bragging about his golf handicap. I scrolled back past Thanksgiving, past last spring, all the way to Christmas Eve of last year. I found a conversation between my mom and Kevin. Mom, December 24th, 10:15 p.m. Nicholas is at the clinic with Noah. I told him to just give the baby Tylenol, but he always overreacts. He's so dramatic. Kevin, 10:20 p.m. LOL. Let him do it. Saves us a trip. Besides, he's fine. He likes feeling needed. It gives him something to do. He likes feeling needed. I read that sentence 3 times. I was in that waiting room holding their feverish kid on Christmas Eve, And Kevin's response was, "Let him do it, he likes feeling needed." I sat with that for a minute. I kept scrolling. A conversation from right after I'd left the Thanksgiving table, less than 3 weeks earlier. "Tina, is Nick really serious about going to the beach? We already paid the resort deposit." Mom, "Oh, don't worry about Nicholas. He'll cave. He always does." Honestly, Nicholas doesn't have a real life anyway. He should be grateful we include him in our holidays at all. Kevin, "The guy makes barely above minimum wage driving an ambulance. Staying at the house is basically a vacation for him anyway. He'll fall in line. He'll fall in line." My phone buzzed. New private text from Tina. "Hey Nick, so excited for Christmas. I know you were talking about some beach trip, but Kevin and I are really counting on you. Kev has been so stressed lately with work and his promotion, and he really needs this break. We know how much you love the kids. It would just break their little hearts if Uncle Nick wasn't there to open presents with them. See you on the 23rd. Hugs and kisses." If I'd gotten that text yesterday, I might have felt something. The familiar pull toward guilt, the weight of disappointing people who'd never once worried about disappointing me. But I was reading it seconds after watching Tina call me a pathetic charity case in the group chat. Seconds after Kevin wrote that my entire life was basically a vacation. And I felt nothing. Zero. Just a cold, flat disgust at the gap between how they talked about me in private and what they had the nerve to send directly. I locked my phone, walked back inside the station, and threw my half-eaten chili in the trash. I had absolute clarity now. No compromises, no negotiations, no, "maybe I can do part of it," or "let me see if I can work something out." I was done being the person who folded. I was going to let them drive straight off the cliff they'd spent 4 years building, and I wasn't going to touch the brakes for them. Okay, pause for a second. For the listeners, this is me, not Nick. I need everyone to fully understand what was in that group chat, because the specific details matter more than the summary. They didn't just take advantage of him. They laughed about it. In writing. In a permanent record. Kevin saw the urgent care notification and typed, "LOL, let him do it," while Nick was literally in that waiting room holding their kid. His mom called it dramatic. Tina sent the hugs and kisses text minutes after calling him a guy with no real life. This isn't a family that forgot to say thank you. This is a family that decided he was furniture, and then got annoyed when the furniture started having opinions about being furniture. That distinction matters a lot for what comes next. The week leading up to Christmas was quiet on my end, and absolutely chaotic in theirs. Based on the group chat, I had zero plans to respond to. My mom posted pictures of the guest room she'd prepared for me. A deflated air mattress on the floor of the kids' playroom, wedged between a plastic slide and a bin of Duplo blocks. Kevin posted weather forecasts for his mountain resort. Tina kept dropping reminders about the feeding schedule, where the emergency inhalers were stored, and an update that the twins' biting phase had escalated. I opened every message, left them all on read, said absolutely nothing. At 4 a.m. on December 23rd, my alarm went off. I did not groan. I got up immediately, showered, grabbed my duffel, and walked out the door. Mark was already in the parking lot in his Jeep, with the engine running and 2 cups of diner coffee in the cup holders. He grinned when I threw my bag in the back. Ready to become a fugitive? "Hit the gas," I said. The airport was the usual holiday chaos, but I moved through it like I was invisible. We checked bags, cleared security, found our gate. I bought a water, sat down, and felt completely calm for the first time in weeks. At 6:30 a.m., we boarded. As the plane accelerated down the runway and the wheels lifted off the tarmac, I looked out the window at the Virginia suburbs falling away below. The sun was just starting to come up, orange along the edges of everything. Down there, my family was waking up to a world they'd never once considered preparing for. We landed in North Carolina just past 8. The air hit different immediately, cold and salty and clean, like a window being thrown open in a room that's been shut too long. We grabbed the rental and started the drive out toward the coast. That's when I switched my cellular data back on. My phone went nuclear. It vibrated so hard and fast I almost dropped it. 14 missed calls from my mom, 8 from Kevin, 5 from Tina, 47 new messages in the group chat. I opened the thread and just scrolled through the documented timeline of their panic. Mom, 7 a.m. Nicholas, Kevin is dropping the kids off in an hour. Are you on your way? Kevin, 7:45 a.m. Hey bro, we're at Mom's. Where are you? We have a 10 a.m. flight to catch. Mom, 8:15 a.m. Nicholas Robert Mercer, answer your phone this instant. This is not funny. Tina, 8:30. Nick, seriously, you are holding up our entire vacation. Get here now. Kevin, 8:45 a.m. If you don't show up in the next 10 minutes, I swear. Mark glanced over from the driver's seat. Everything blowing up? Yeah, I said. Just then, my mom's call came through live. I looked at the screen for a second, let the salt air fill my lungs. Then I swiped green. Her voice was a screech loud enough to actually hurt. Nicholas, where on earth are you? Kevin is going to miss his flight. The kids are destroying the living room. You get here right now. I kept my voice completely flat. I'm not coming, Mom. Dead silence. In the background, 5 kids absolutely losing it. What do you mean you're not coming? It came out like a sentence she'd never had reason to form before. I told you at Thanksgiving I had plans. I bought my tickets months ago. I'm currently in a rental car driving down the coast of the Outer Banks. You boarded a plane? She sounded like she couldn't physically process the concept. You are abandoning your family. Turn around and come back right now. Have a Merry Christmas, Mom. Nicholas, don't you dare hang up on... I tapped the red button. Turned on Do Not Disturb. Rolled the window down. The cold air came in fast and hit my face, and honestly, I don't know how else to say this. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I could actually breathe. Like something had been sitting on my chest for 4 solid years, and someone finally moved it. Yo, timeout. Let's talk logistics for a second. Kevin and Tina had hours of warning that Nick wasn't coming. Multiple hours? And they still missed a $1,600 non-refundable resort booking because apparently the entire backup plan for 5 kids was, Nick will definitely cave. There was no plan B. They never needed one because every single year for 4 years, he folded. So they built nothing. Zero contingency. Zero alternative. They were running entirely on the assumption that his spine had an expiration date. The moment it didn't, the whole operation collapsed. The golden child lost his mountain vacation because his brother finally started behaving like a guy with places to be and things worth protecting. I genuinely love this. The next 48 hours were everything I'd been saving for. Mark and I got to the cabin around noon, threw our stuff inside, and did nothing productive for hours. Massive plates of fresh seafood that first night, slept 10 straight hours. No screaming, no laminated anything, no 4:30 a.m. alarms. The cabin had this old wooden dock out back that groaned whenever you stepped on it. Sat out there the second morning just listening to the water. Didn't think about anything in particular. Best part of the whole trip, honestly. Completely irrelevant detail, but that's the one I remember. I knew the finale was coming regardless. Every Christmas at exactly 3 p.m., the extended Mercer family does a Zoom call. Started during the pandemic, became a tradition nobody ever voted to end. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone logs on for an hour of performative holiday cheer. I'd never missed one. At 2:55 p.m. on Christmas Day, I sat on the porch with my laptop open. Ocean roaring behind me. I clicked the Zoom link, the screen filled with little squares. Uncle Ray and Aunt Donna from their immaculate living room in Georgia. Cousin Greg looking rough in his college dorm. A couple of aunts I only see twice a year. And then my mom's living room. It looked like it had been ransacked. Wrapping paper shredded across every surface. Ethan crying in the corner. My mom looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days. Hair a mess. The bags under her eyes visible even through a laptop camera. Kevin and Tina were on the couch looking absolutely wrecked. They hadn't made their 10 a.m. flight. They'd lost the resort money. When my square loaded, me, sitting on a porch in a hoodie, visibly relaxed, the Atlantic audible in the background, the entire call went dead silent. My mom's face found mine on the screen. Then it crumpled into that theatrical grief she does on special occasions. Immediate fake sobbing. Kevin sneered hard enough that I could see it through the pixelation. Look who decided to show up. Hope you're enjoying your little beach trip while you ruined our entire Christmas. You selfish... Kevin, Aunt Donna cut in sharply. Let him speak, my mom wailed. No, Donna, let him. Nicholas abandoned us. He lied. He packed his bags and left us stranded with 5 children on Christmas Eve. I have been up for 2 straight days. Kevin lost $1,600 on a non-refundable resort because his own brother stabbed him in the back. Cousin Greg, bless his heart, shook his head at me. Nick, man, that's cold. Family comes first. I let them go for another 20 seconds. Just watch them stack up the accusations. Then I said calmly, I didn't lie. I told you at Thanksgiving I had plans. You chose to ignore me and demand I work as a free nanny. You are a part of this family, my mom screamed. You owe us. We raised you. You have no idea what it means to sacrifice. Then a new square lit up on the call with a green border. Aunt Pauline, sharp blazer, reading glasses. The expression of someone who has been waiting for exactly this moment and is in zero hurry. Linda, shut your mouth. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It had a specific, settled kind of authority that made the entire call go still immediately. My mom gasped. Pauline, excuse me. I said shut your mouth, Linda. I am sick watching you play victim. And Kevin, you arrogant little boy. You have some nerve calling your brother selfish. Kevin started talking over her. Aunt Pauline, you don't know the full story. I know exactly what the story is, Kevin. She held her smartphone up to the camera. Because unlike the rest of this family, I have been reading the group chat. I've been watching how you two talk about Nicholas when you think no one is paying attention. And since we're apparently doing family values on Christmas Day, let's share with the class. My mom's face went from pale to the specific shade of white that means something real is happening. Oh, I'm daring. Pauline said it with complete calm. She tapped her screen and began reading. Her enunciation was clean and deliberate. Every word placed exactly where it would do the most damage. Nicholas is so dramatic. He likes feeling needed. It gives him something to do. She delivered it flat, Kevin's exact cadence. Then she swiped. He makes barely above minimum wage driving an ambulance. Staying at the house is basically a vacation for him anyway. He'll fall in line. Aunt Donna let out an audible gasp. Uncle Ray took his glasses off and rubbed the bridge of his nose slowly. Cousin Greg was suddenly very interested in his own knees. And my personal favorite. Pauline's voice stayed level the entire time. Her eyes had not moved from my mom's face. Nicholas doesn't have a real life anyway. He should be grateful we include him in our holidays at all. Written by you, Linda, his own mother. The silence that followed was total. The kind that rings in your ears across 16 different households. You could have heard a pin drop in Georgia. Kevin's mouth opened and closed. Tina was staring at the floor. And then something happened that I genuinely did not expect. Not in 28 years of watching my dad be a quiet, conflict-avoiding ghost in his own home. He stepped into the frame. My dad, Robert, walked up behind my mom and stood directly in front of the laptop camera. His face was dark red, a vein visible on his forehead that I'd never noticed in my entire life. Is that true, Linda? It wasn't a question exactly. His voice shook. Did you write those things about our son? Robert, she stammered, actually leaning back from him. I was just venting. It was taken out of context. His hand came down on the coffee table. Hard. The kids in the room screamed. You treat him like a servant. You let Kevin treat him like he's nothing. No wonder he got on a plane. I am ashamed of you, Linda. I am ashamed of both of you. He turned around and walked out of the frame. Gone. My heart was going fast. My voice was completely steady. I looked into the camera and I said, I spent 4 years sacrificing my time, my money, and my sanity, because I thought that's what family was supposed to mean. But you don't want a son, Mom. You want an unpaid employee. And Kevin, you don't want a brother. You want a servant. So I quit. I leaned slightly forward. I'm done being the person who gives up his own life so everyone else can enjoy theirs. If you ever want an actual relationship with me, you will treat me with basic respect. Until that day, lose my number. I clicked leave meeting. The screen went black. The ocean kept going. I sat back in the chair and waited for the guilt to show up. The old conditioned response, the nagging voice that said I was a bad son, a bad brother. It didn't come. What came instead was this overwhelming lightness, like something had been sitting across my shoulders for 4 solid years and had finally been put down. Okay, I need a minute. Because Aunt Pauline walked into that call wearing a blazer with a phone full of evidence she'd been quietly collecting for years, and she executed. No announcement, no warm-up, no giving Kevin or Linda a chance to get ahead of it. She just started reading, cleanly, in front of 16 households on Christmas afternoon. That's not an aunt. That's a field operative who's been waiting 3 years for the right moment to deploy. She did more damage in 90 seconds than Nick could have done in a decade of arguments. And then his dad, the man who'd been silently eating dinner rolls through every family disaster for 28 years, slammed a table. Nick had already won. He just got a live studio audience for it. Good day. Final update. Around 8 p.m. that night, my phone buzzed. Not a call or a text. A Venmo notification. Kevin Mercer has sent you $180. Note field, blank. I stared at the screen and let out an actual laugh. Loud enough that Mark came out onto the porch to check on me. $180. The exact amount of the urgent care bill from the year before. The one he'd pocketed the receipt for and never mentioned again. No apology, no explanation. Just a quiet transfer in the dark from a man who couldn't even type a single word in the note field. The most cowardly acknowledgement of guilt I have ever seen in my life. But he paid it. The golden child finally settling debts he'd pretended didn't exist. A few hours later, Aunt Pauline sent me a private text. Kevin and Tina had packed up the kids and left my mom's house within an hour of the call ending. My mom was locked in her room. My dad was in the living room watching whatever game was on. Proud of you, kid. Enjoy the beach? I smiled at the screen in the dark. The next 4 days, I actually lived. We went fishing and caught almost nothing and laughed about it. We ate terrible gas station junk food on the drive back from the pier one afternoon, and Mark played music I'd never heard, and we didn't talk about the family stuff at all. The group chat went completely silent. 47 messages in one morning and then nothing. Like a storm that blew itself out. Digital graveyard. When I got back to my apartment after the trip, it didn't feel small anymore. It felt like mine. Every square foot of it earned on my schedule, my hours, my honest work. I threw a load of laundry in the wash, ordered a full pizza just for myself, and sat on the couch watching a dumb action movie with nowhere to be and nobody to answer to. A few weeks into January, Dr. Walsh at the station told me I was operating at 110% and wanted to know what I'd done differently. I said I dropped some dead weight. He said to keep doing it. Through Aunt Donna, who cannot hold information for more than 48 hours, I heard what Kevin's world looked like without the free childcare safety net. With my dad banning his house as an on-demand daycare, Kevin and Tina had to hire a real nanny. $20 an hour, overtime, weekends off. The money they'd been saving by running things through me was evaporating. Kevin was apparently complaining loudly to anyone who'd listen about how expensive it is to raise a family. The Porsche sat in his driveway, looking less like a trophy every week. 10 days into January, my phone rang. Mom. Her voice was small. The commanding edge gone, replaced by something older and tired. She said she'd spent 2 weeks being angry at everyone else. Then my dad sat her down. She said she was wrong, that she'd taken me for granted for years, let Kevin treat me like I had no value outside of what I could do for him, and was ashamed of what she'd written in that chat. She wasn't asking for immediate forgiveness. She just needed me to know she understood. I let her finish. Then I said, "You didn't just take me for granted. You told your family I had no real life. You made me feel like I had to earn my place by being useful to Kevin." She said I know. She was crying. Real this time, not the Zoom performance. I told her how things would work going forward. Not the default babysitter, not the family handyman. When I show up, it's as a son, as a guest, not staff. And if I'm ever treated like a servant again, I walk out and don't come back. Are we clear? Yes, she said, completely. We agreed to start slow. Spring eventually showed up in Virginia. I drove out to my parents' house for dinner. First time back since Thanksgiving. Kevin's Porsche wasn't in the driveway. He and Tina were home dealing with a nanny who'd called in sick. I walked through the front door. Roast chicken, garlic. My mom came out of the kitchen looking nervous, gave me a careful hug. My dad came in from the garage and gave me a firm pat on the back. Good to see you, son. Game's about to start. Table set for 3. No sippy cups, no laminated anything. Just dinner. We talked about my shifts, baseball season, my dad's garden, Nobody handed me a task or asked me to sacrifice anything. I was just a son having dinner with his parents. I stayed 2 hours exactly. Set a silent alarm. When it went off, I helped clear my plate and said my goodbyes. My mom didn't guilt me into staying. She just said, "Drive safe, Nicholas. We loved having you." Kevin and I haven't spoken since the Zoom call. That one's still open. I'm not in any rush to close it. My dad calls every week now. And honestly, that might be the part of all of this I'm still the most surprised by. You stop making yourself endlessly available for exploitation, and sometimes, on a good day, somebody decides they actually want to know you instead. Took 28 years, but I'll take it. If there's anyone out there who's the person in their family who always says yes, who cancels their own plans, covers the costs, watches the kids, sets the table, and cleans it up while everyone else watches TV, I'm not going to give you some speech about it. I'll just say this. You're allowed to stop. Not because you don't love them, but because you love yourself enough to finally take up space in your own life. That's it. That's the whole thing. Look, Nick wasn't blameless in the early years. He said yes when he should have said no. 4 Christmases running. But there's a real difference between someone who makes a mistake and a family that writes, "He doesn't have a real life anyway," in a group chat, while that person is holding their sick kid in an urgent care waiting room. When Nick stopped being predictable, the whole machine broke down instantly. That tells you everything about what he actually was to them. If your value to someone only exists while you're being useful, that's not love. That's employment. Drop your take in the comments. What would you have done at that Thanksgiving table? And if you're not subscribed yet, hit the button so you don't miss the next one. What would you do if your parents looked you in the eye and told you that the money they promised for your future was going to your screw-up brother instead? Not borrowed, not temporarily redirected, gone. That's what happened to this guy. He spent 18 years being the invisible kid who held his entire family together while his older brother got the car, the cash, the attention, and the excuses. And when it finally came time for him to get his one thing, they yanked it away without blinking. So he did the only reasonable thing. He walked out, built his life from zero, and let the whole machine break down without him. This one hits different. My parents gave my trade school money to bail out my brother, so I left and let them figure it out themselves. This is a long one, but I've been holding it in for almost 2 years, and I need to get it off my chest. Some of this is going to sound exaggerated, but I promise every word is real. I'm 20 now, but this story starts when I was 18, and finally realized I was nothing to my family except free labor with a heartbeat. My name's Nate. I grew up outside of Atlanta, in one of those suburbs where every house has a 2-car garage and a lawn that looks like it belongs on a magazine cover. My dad, Greg, runs a mid-sized landscaping company. Does commercial properties, HOA contracts, the whole deal. Makes solid money from it. My mom, Linda, works as the office manager at a dental practice. Between the two of them, they pull in somewhere around 200 grand a year. Big house, nice neighborhood, 2 kids who couldn't have turned out more different if they tried. My older brother Brandon is 25 now. He's been the center of the universe in our family since the day he was born. First grandchild on both sides, star athlete in high school, the one everybody talked about at family events. Brandon played quarterback, dated the homecoming queen, had college scouts showing up to his games junior year. He was that guy, the golden boy, the one my parents built their entire identity around. Me? I was the other one. The quiet kid who showed up, did his work, kept his head down, and never caused a scene. Which in my family meant I was basically invisible. The favoritism wasn't even subtle. It was the kind of obvious that made other parents uncomfortable at school events. Brandon got a brand new Dodge Charger for his 16th birthday. Custom exhaust, tinted windows, the works. Probably cost close to 40 grand. I got a 10-year-old Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and a check engine light that had been on so long it was basically a feature. Brandon got $1,500 a month in spending money through all 6 years of his on and off college career. I worked at a tire shop after school and weekends just to cover gas and clothes and anything else I needed because my parents said earning my own money would build character. When Brandon wanted to go to Florida for spring break with his buddies, my dad handed him 3 grand without blinking. When I needed 400 for welding certification prep materials, my mom told me the family budget was tight that quarter. The budget was always tight when it came to me, never when it came to him. And here's the thing that really messed with my head growing up. I was the one actually keeping that house running. While Brandon was out partying and bouncing between majors and crashing his car twice before he turned 21, I was the one making sure things didn't fall apart at home. I handled the yard because Dad said a landscaper's son should know how to maintain his own property. I did the grocery runs because Mom was always too tired after work. I kept track of bills and due dates because both my parents are terrible with paperwork and deadlines. I helped Dad with invoicing and scheduling for his business on weekends because his office manager quit, and he never bothered to hire a replacement. I was essentially an unpaid employee in my own household from the age of 14. My parents justified all of it with the same line every time. Brandon's sensitive. He needs extra support. He's still finding himself. You're the responsible one, Nate. You don't need as much help because you've got a good head on your shoulders. They turned my competence into a punishment. Every time I handled something well, it became proof that I didn't need attention or resources. Every time Brandon failed at something, it became proof that he needed more of both. I kept a 3.9 GPA while working 25 hours a week. Nobody said a word. Brandon passed 2 classes in a semester, and my parents took him out to his favorite restaurant to celebrate his progress. I finished my welding vocational program at the technical high school and got certified before I even graduated. My parents didn't come to the ceremony. They were busy dealing with Brandon's latest crisis, which that particular week was a fender bender he got into because he was on his phone. I walked across that stage, shook the instructor's hand, and looked out at an audience full of other people's families cheering. My row was empty, but I kept telling myself it would be worth it, because my parents had made me a promise. They told me that when I graduated high school, they'd help me pay for the advanced welding technology program at the technical college. 14-month program. Specialized certifications in TIG and pipe welding. The kind of credentials that get you $60 to $80 an hour on pipeline jobs and industrial contracts. The program cost about $12,000 total. My parents said they'd cover it as my graduation gift. They said it was the least they could do since I'd been such a help to the family. I believed them. That was my mistake. I'd been planning my entire future around that program. Already talked to the admissions office, picked my start date, mapped out my schedule so I could keep working part-time at the tire shop while going to school. I had a 5-year plan written out on a yellow legal pad that I kept in my nightstand. Graduate the program. Get hired on with an industrial contractor. Save for 2 years. Start my own mobile welding operation by 23. I looked at that legal pad every night before I went to sleep. It was the one thing that kept me going through all the nonsense at home. Then 3 weeks before my program was supposed to start, everything blew up. Brandon had gotten himself into the worst mess of his entire career of messes. He'd been working at some buddy's car detailing shop. And I'm using that term loosely because from what I could tell, his job mostly consisted of showing up late, leaving early, and posting videos of himself buffing hoods on social media. Anyway, he went out one night with some friends and got pulled over doing 60 in a 35. That alone would have been bad enough. But Brandon also had a suspended license from a previous incident that he'd never dealt with. On top of that, they found stuff in his car that I'm not even going to get into, but let's just say it wasn't vitamins. He was looking at multiple charges, mandatory court appearances, and the very real possibility of actual time. My parents went into full crisis mode. And by crisis mode, I mean they treated it exactly like every other Brandon situation. Total emotional mobilization. Mom took days off work to go to court with him. Dad canceled client jobs to meet with attorneys. They hired a criminal defense lawyer who charged $8,000 just as a retainer. Then there were bail costs, fines, mandatory program fees. All told, they were looking at somewhere around $20,000 to $25,000 to dig Brandon out of this hole. I watched all of this unfold from the sidelines for about a week before the other shoe dropped. I came home from the tire shop on a Wednesday evening. Tired, grease under my nails, ready to take a shower and go over my enrollment paperwork one more time. Dad was sitting at the kitchen table with a look on his face that I can only describe as a man who knows he's about to do something wrong and is trying to figure out how to make it sound reasonable. He told me they needed to talk about the trade school money. My whole body went cold before he even said the next sentence. I already knew. Some part of me had known since the moment Brandon got arrested. I just didn't want to believe they'd actually do it. They needed the money for Brandon's legal fees. All of it. The $12,000 they'd set aside for my program was being redirected to pay for lawyers and fines and whatever else it took to keep their golden boy out of a cell. Dad sat there and explained it like he was delivering reasonable news. Like this was a tough but necessary family decision that I should understand and accept. He said Brandon's situation was urgent and time-sensitive. He said my program could wait a semester while they got things sorted out. He said they'd make it up to me once Brandon's situation was resolved. I asked him one question. How long? He couldn't answer. Started talking in circles about how these things take time and how the legal process is unpredictable and how once Brandon gets back on his feet, they'll reassess the family finances. Which told me everything I needed to know. There was no timeline. There was no plan to replace the money. There was just Brandon, again, and me getting pushed to the back of the line, again. Mom walked in during the conversation and immediately tried to smooth things over. She put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Sweetie, I know this is disappointing, but your brother could go to jail. We have to help him. You understand that, right? Family has to come first. Family has to come first." I'd been hearing that line my whole life, but it only ever went in one direction. Hold on. For those listening, this is me jumping in, not the OP. I need everyone to sit with what just happened. This kid spent 4 years being his family's unpaid intern, personal assistant, and emotional punching bag. And the one time he needed something back, they said, "Nah, your brother's more important. That's not a family. That's a subscription service." And Nate just found out he's been on the free tier this whole time. Meanwhile, Brandon is out here collecting felonies like Infinity Stones, except instead of wiping out half the universe, he's just wiping out his parents' savings account. And they're funding it, willingly, with Nate's money. What happens next is why I love this channel. I looked at both of them sitting there, and for the first time in 18 years, I didn't feel sad about it. I didn't feel that familiar ache of wanting their approval and not getting it. I felt something new. I felt done. I told them I understood. Said it was fine. Went to my room and closed the door. And then I started making plans. Over the next 10 days, I operated like nothing had changed. Went to school, worked my shifts, did the grocery shopping, helped Dad with his invoices on Saturday morning, smiled at dinner, answered questions about my day, played the role of the good, quiet, responsible son they'd always needed me to be. But behind the scenes, I was methodically taking my life apart piece by piece and rebuilding it somewhere they couldn't reach. First, I called my buddy Jake. We'd been friends since freshman year, and his family had always treated me like one of their own. His mom used to joke that she had 3 sons. Jake had mentioned months ago that his uncle had a small apartment over his garage that he rented out cheap. I called the uncle directly, told him my situation. He said he could do $450 a month utilities included, and I could move in whenever I was ready. Done. Then I called my boss at the tire shop, a guy named Doug. Doug had been more of a father figure to me than my actual father ever was. He'd been telling me for months that he wanted to bring me on full-time after graduation. When I told him I needed to accelerate that timeline, he didn't ask a lot of questions. Just said, "I'll get you to 40 hours starting next week, and we'll figure out a path to get you that welding program on your own terms." Third, I went to the technical college and explained my situation to the financial aid office. Turns out there were payment plans, workforce development grants, and employer-sponsored options that I'd never explored because I'd been counting on my parents' money. The admissions advisor spent an hour with me mapping out alternatives. I could defer my start date by 1 semester, apply for a state workforce grant that covered 70% of tuition, and pay the rest in monthly installments. It would take longer than I'd planned, but it was completely doable without a single dollar from my parents. The morning I left, I woke up at 5:30. Saturday. Parents still asleep. Brandon was who knows where, probably out somewhere creating the next crisis. I'd been moving things out gradually all week. Clothes in trash bags stashed in my trunk. Important documents in a folder under my seat. My welding gear, my tools, my laptop, everything that mattered was already at Jake's uncle's place. I stood in my room for a minute, looking at the empty shelves and the bare walls. 18 years in this room, and I could fit everything that mattered into the back of a Civic. That says something. The trophies from welding competitions, the certificates from vocational training, the one photo I had of me and Doug at the tire shop after he gave me a raise. That was my whole life in 3 trash bags and a cardboard box. I grabbed the yellow legal pad, looked at my 5-year plan, and realized I needed to update it. The timeline was different now, but the destination was the same. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Short, no drama. I moved out. Don't worry about me. I have a place to stay and a plan. The trade school money situation made it clear where I stand in this family, and I'm done pretending it's something it's not. I hope Brandon's legal stuff works out. I hope things get better for everyone. But I won't be here to watch it happen or to fix it when it doesn't. Take care. Then I drove away in my cracked windshield Honda with everything I owned in the back seat. Sun barely coming up over the trees. Neighborhood dead quiet. I looked at the house in my rearview mirror one time and then I didn't look back again. Pause for a second. Can we appreciate the surgical precision of this exit? Most guys would have had a screaming match at the table, thrown a chair, sent a 10-page text at 2 in the morning. Not this dude. He smiled at dinner for 10 days straight while quietly dismantling his presence in that house like a Navy SEAL extracting from a hostile zone. Lined up an apartment, locked down full-time hours, found financial aid, moved his stuff out in stages, and left a note so calm it probably gave his parents chills. That's not revenge. That's project management with a grudge. The yellow legal pad? My guy had a business plan at 18. Brandon had a mugshot. The first few weeks on my own were hard in the way that real life is hard. Not dramatic. Just long days and tight budgets and learning how to cook rice without burning it and figuring out that you actually have to buy your own toilet paper because it doesn't just appear under the bathroom sink. I remember standing in a grocery store my first week, staring at the price of laundry detergent and doing math in my head to figure out if I could afford the name brand or had to go generic. Went generic. Still do honestly. But even the hard parts felt different than the hard parts at home. Because at home, hard meant doing everything for everyone and getting nothing back. On my own, hard meant building something that was actually mine. Every grocery run was for my fridge. Every bill I paid was for my apartment. Every hour I worked was going into my future, not Brandon's latest catastrophe. Nobody telling me to pick up their dry cleaning. Nobody rating my future to fund someone else's mistakes. Just me in a garage apartment eating budget spaghetti and feeling more at peace than I ever had in my parents' 5-bedroom house. Side note, I burned the spaghetti the first 3 times. Turns out you're supposed to actually stir it. Who knew? Doug at the tire shop was incredible. Bumped me to full-time immediately and started giving me side work on weekends, doing basic welding repairs for his fleet of shop vehicles. Paid me cash on top of my regular wages. He also connected me with a buddy of his who ran a fabrication shop and needed part-time help. Between the tire shop, the side welding gigs, and watching every dollar like it owed me money, I'd saved enough for a deposit on the welding program within 3 months. Enrolled for the winter semester. I started the program 5 months later than originally planned, but I started it with my own money, and nobody could take it away from me. The day I walked into that welding lab for the first time, I looked around at the equipment, the booths, the instructors, and I thought about that kitchen table conversation where my dad told me my future could wait. Nah, it couldn't, and it didn't. Meanwhile, the news from home was coming in through Jake, whose mom stayed plugged into the neighborhood network. And I'm going to be honest, what I heard gave me a level of satisfaction that I'm not totally proud of. But I'm not going to pretend I didn't feel it. Okay, stop. I need everyone to understand what's about to happen. Nate was the load-bearing wall of this entire family, and they just removed him to build an extension for Brandon's legal defense. If you know anything about houses or families, you know what happens next. The whole structure starts sagging. And it's not even dramatic. It's just slow. Cracks in the ceiling. Doors that don't close right anymore. One day, you're refinancing the house and your wife is working weekends at a clothing store and you're wondering how you went from $200,000 a year to maxed out credit cards. That's what's coming. Popcorn ready. The first cracks showed up within weeks. Without me there to handle the day-to-day operations, my parents' lives started falling apart in ways they didn't even see coming. Dad's landscaping business took the first hit. I'd been doing his scheduling, invoicing, and client follow-ups for years. Without me, he started double-booking crews, missing deadlines, forgetting to send quotes. He lost 3 HOA contracts in the first 2 months because he kept showing up on the wrong days or not showing up at all. Mom's situation got messy too. She'd been leaning on me to help organize her personal schedule around her work schedule, tracking appointments, reminders, even laying out her outfits for important meetings because she said it helped her manage her anxiety. Without her personal assistant/son, she started dropping balls everywhere. Showed up to work in mismatched shoes one day. That actually happened. Jake's mom told me, and I almost felt bad for laughing. Almost. But the real show was Brandon. With me gone, there was nobody to absorb the chaos. Nobody to clean up after him or buffer his messes. His legal situation dragged on for months and cost even more than they'd expected. The lawyer fees alone ended up being over $15,000. On top of that, he got mandatory community service, a suspended license for 18 months, and required classes that cost money. My parents covered all of it, obviously, because that's what they do. They sold Dad's base boat first, then Mom's good car, downgraded to an older model that was about as glamorous as my Honda, which honestly gave me a dark little chuckle. Then Brandon lost his detailing shop job because of course he did. The owner found out about the legal situation and let him go. So now he was living at home rent-free, eating their food, driving Dad's work truck when he needed to get somewhere even though his license was suspended, contributing absolutely nothing. My parents had always had me there to offset Brandon's drain on the household. I was the one who picked up slack, saved money, handled responsibilities that freed up their time and energy to deal with him. Without that balance, the math stopped working. 2 full adults supporting 1 adult-sized child with no income and escalating legal costs. Within 6 months of me leaving, they refinanced the house. Within 9 months, Mom picked up a second job working weekends at a clothing store. Dad started taking on extra jobs himself, working 6- and 7-day weeks just to stay afloat. Their social life disappeared. They stopped going to neighborhood cookouts and HOA events. And that's the part that really twisted things for them. The community finding out. See, our neighborhood was tight. People talked. Parents compared kids. And for years, my mom and dad had enjoyed the reputation of having the family that had it all together. Greg's landscaping business was everywhere. Linda was always put together and professional. And their sons, well, Brandon was the charming star, and I was the quiet achiever. Good family, good kids, the whole picture. But when I disappeared and people started asking questions, the story fell apart fast. My teachers at the high school knew something was off. Doug didn't hide his opinion of how my parents handled things. Jake's family was openly supportive of me, which told their whole social circle exactly whose side the reasonable people were on. The gossip spread the way it does in neighborhoods like that. Quietly at first. Whispers at block parties and sidelong glances at the grocery store. Then louder. Did you hear their younger son moved out the week he turned 18? Apparently they took his college money and gave it to the other one. The responsible kid left, and now they can't even keep their lawn mowed. The irony of a landscaper's house looking rough was not lost on anyone. Jake's mom told me that at the neighborhood 4th of July cookout that summer, somebody actually asked my dad directly where I was. He apparently mumbled something about me being busy with work and changed the subject. But the woman who asked already knew the truth, because her daughter went to school with me, and I'd told a few close friends the real story before I left. Dad started losing bids to competitors, not because his work was bad, but because people didn't want to give money to a guy who treated his own kid like a second-class citizen. One of his biggest clients, an HOA that represented over 60 properties, switched to a different company after the board president heard the story from her son, who was on my welding team. Mom lost a couple of referral sources at the dental office when patients who knew our family decided they'd rather go elsewhere. In a business built on trust and relationships, reputation matters. And theirs was circling the drain. Wait. The irony here is so thick you could spread it on toast. Greg, a landscaper, built his entire livelihood on making things look good from the outside. And his own house is falling apart because the one kid who actually maintained it got tired of being treated like the help. If Karma was a screenwriter, this would win an Oscar. Meanwhile, Brandon is out here living rent-free, jobless, license suspended, eating their groceries, and somehow still not the one getting told to figure it out. It's like watching someone play The Sims and deliberately making every bad decision to see what happens. Spoiler. What happens is, you sell the base boat. The call started about 2 months after I left. First just Mom. Casual-sounding voicemails. Hey, sweetie, just checking in. Want to make sure you're doing okay? Call me back when you get a chance. I didn't call back. Then they got longer, more desperate. Your father and I really miss you. The house isn't the same without you. We'd love to have you over for dinner. Still didn't respond. Then Dad started calling. His voicemails were shorter but heavier. Son, I know we messed up. Call me. 6 words that were supposed to undo 18 years of being second place. I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I wanted to be cruel, but because I knew exactly what would happen if I went back. I'd walk through that door, and within 48 hours, I'd be doing dishes, running invoices, fixing Brandon's problems, and hearing about how the family budget was tight right when I needed something. The cycle would restart. They didn't miss me. They missed what I did for them. The real collapse came about a year after I left. Brandon managed to violate his probation. I don't know the exact details because by that point I'd stopped keeping track. But from what Jake told me, it involved missing mandatory check-ins and failing a required test and some kind of altercation at a gas station that got the police involved again. This time the judge wasn't lenient. He was looking at actual time, not years, but months. Real consequences for the first time in his charmed little life. My parents panicked, hired another lawyer, spent another chunk of money they didn't have. Dad had to borrow against the landscaping business. Mom maxed out a credit card. They threw everything they had left at keeping Brandon out of trouble, and it still only partially worked. He got a reduced sentence, but the damage to the family finances was catastrophic. The house went up for sale 8 months ago. I drove past it once on my way to a job. There was a for sale sign in the yard, and the landscaping looked terrible. I won't lie, that image stuck with me. Not in a sad way, in a this is what happens way. They sold the house at a loss and moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. Dad's business shrank to just him and 1 crew because he couldn't afford to keep employees. Mom was still working 2 jobs. Brandon moved back in with them after his situation resolved and was doing exactly what he'd always done. Nothing. Sitting in their apartment, eating their food, watching their TV, contributing 0 while they ground themselves into dust trying to keep him afloat. Final update. Last month I got the call. I was in my apartment after a 12-hour shift at the fabrication shop where I'd been working since finishing my welding program. Tired, but the good kind of tired. The kind that comes from doing work that matters and getting paid well for it. I'd finished my program 6 months earlier, got hired on immediately at $62 an hour doing pipeline work, and was already saving for my own mobile welding rig. My 5-year plan from the legal pad? Ahead of schedule. My phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. Picked up because sometimes job sites call from random lines. It was Dad. He sounded old. Not just tired. Old. Like the last 2 years had aged him a decade. His voice had this raspy quality I didn't recognize. Like a man who'd been yelling into a void and finally lost the energy to keep going. He told me everything. The house being sold. The business shrinking to basically a 1-man operation with a single truck. Mom working herself into the ground between 2 jobs and coming home so tired she falls asleep on the couch before dinner. Brandon being Brandon. Still living with them, still not pulling his weight, still costing money they don't have. The debt piling up. The fact that he and Mom had been fighting constantly, blaming each other for how things turned out, and seriously talking about separating after 27 years. Then he said the thing I'd been waiting 2 years to hear. We were wrong about everything. We gave your brother every chance in the world, and he wasted all of it. We gave you nothing, and you built everything on your own. We had it completely backwards, and by the time we figured it out, you were gone and everything fell apart. I should have paid for your program. I should have told Brandon to figure out his own problems. I should have treated you like you mattered, because you did. You were the only one who actually held this family together, and we didn't see it until you were gone. Mom got on the phone, crying before she even said a word. She told me she was proud of me, that she'd been telling people about my welding career and my certifications and how I'd built my life from nothing. She said she brags about me to everyone at work, but feels like a fraud because she didn't help me get there. I sat there on my couch in my apartment, the one I pay for with money I earned doing work I trained for with credentials I got on my own. And I let them finish talking. When they were done, I told them what I'd been thinking for 2 years. I told them I appreciated the apology, that I could tell it was real. But I also told them I wasn't coming back to be their fix-it person, that I wasn't going to manage Dad's invoices or organize Mom's schedule or bail out Brandon. That ship sailed the morning I drove away with everything I owned in a Honda Civic. I told them I was open to having a relationship, but it would be on my terms. I would visit when I wanted to, not when they needed something. I wouldn't give money or time to Brandon's problems. And if I ever felt like I was being used again, I'd be gone for good, and they wouldn't get a third chance. Dad said he understood. Mom said, of course. Anything you want. I also told them that Brandon needed to get a real job and start paying his own way, or this whole cycle was going to repeat until it buried them. Dad got quiet and said they'd been having that conversation. I told him having the conversation wasn't enough. Following through was the part they'd never been good at. He said, I know. And for once, I believed he actually did. That was a month ago. I've seen them twice since then. Once for dinner at a restaurant, neutral territory. Awkward, but not hostile. Dad asked about my work and actually listened when I talked about pipe welding techniques, instead of changing the subject. Mom didn't bring up Brandon once the entire meal. Small progress, but progress. The second time was last weekend. Dad came to see a project I'd been working on, a custom gate for a ranch property outside the city. He stood there looking at my welds, and I could see something in his face that I'd never seen directed at me before. Not just pride, regret. The kind that comes from realizing you had something valuable right in front of you, and you spent years looking past it at something shiny that turned out to be worthless. He didn't say much, just put his hand on my shoulder and stood there for a minute. Then he said, "You did all of this yourself?" I said, "Yeah, I did." That's where things stand. I'm 20 years old with a career, my own place, money in the bank, and a 5-year plan that's running ahead of schedule. My parents are broke, exhausted, and just now learning lessons they should have figured out when I was 10. Brandon is still Brandon, but apparently he started working at a warehouse last week, which is the longest he's held a job in years. Whether that sticks is their problem, not mine. I don't hate my family. I really don't. But I also don't owe them anything. They had 18 years to treat me like I mattered, and they chose not to. I had 2 years on my own, and I built something better than anything they ever gave me. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is stop being useful to people who only value you for what you provide. So Reddit. If your family treated you like the backup plan your whole life, would you have stuck around or would you have done what I did? Edit. A lot of people are asking about the 5-year plan on the yellow legal pad. Yeah, I still have it. It's taped to the wall above my desk in my apartment. Updated it a few times, but the bones are the same. Also, Doug from the tire shop came to my welding program graduation. Front row. Took pictures and everything. That man showed up for me when my own parents wouldn't. Every guy needs a Doug in his life. Look, I'm not going to pretend this is a happy ending with a bow on it. His parents are barely keeping it together. Brandon just started his first real job at 25, and Nate's still figuring out what kind of relationship he even wants with these people. But at 20 years old, this dude has a career paying $62 an hour, a 5-year plan running ahead of schedule, and the kind of self-respect you can't buy with a Dodge Charger and a monthly allowance. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He just quietly became independent. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done? If you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and fix that.